Chapter 8:12. The refining of the 9 revolutions soul returning pill took an extremely long time as they waited for an entire day and night. During this time, Tang Jing circled around the 9 revolutions pill furnace again and again as he felt somewhat apprehensive. Although he followed the Empyrean fairy's instructions to the letter, he still did not know whether or not he would succeed. After all, the sap from the tree of life was not something that could be compared to other things. Once used, it would be gone. Fang Shishir and Marshall also came to ask him a few times, but seeing that he was completely focused on refining the pill, they did not voice their doubts. The two of them were filled with thoughts and could only choose to remain silent for the time being. In the evening, the sky had already darkened and the villa was brightly lit. Everyone was gathered together as they stared at the 9 revolutions pill furnace. Even Mu Hongyan and Nana were curiously gathered around as this was the first time they had seen a pill being refined. They were both curious and excited as they looked forward to it. The 9 revolutions pill furnace had already stopped spinning and was quietly resting on the ground. However, the top of the furnace was still covered by a layer of purple light, making it impossible to see what was going on inside. Tang Zheng's expression was solemn as he took a deep breath and slapped his hands on the outside of the furnace. Kacha! The purple light shattered and completely dispersed. A gentle white light soared into the sky and instantly filled the entire room. A strange fragrance assailed everyone's nostrils, causing their limbs and bones to feel incomparably comfortable. Everyone was bathed in the light as if they had returned to their mother's embrace. A mysterious feeling of intimacy involuntarily arose and everyone's lips could not help but curl into a beautiful arc. What's wrong with me? Why do I have such a strange feeling? Everyone's heart was filled with this question as they looked at each other in dismay. However, when they saw the expressions of the others, they became even more puzzled. Tang Zheng could not help but exclaim in surprise. The Empyrean fairy had said that the 9 revolutions soul returning pill had the miraculous effect of reviving the dead and regrowing flesh and bones. It seemed that this was not an exaggeration, as the strange phenomenon that the pill was displaying was enough to explain many things. The 9th heaven fairy's eyelids twitched a few times. Suppressing the throbbing in her heart, she pretended to be calm and urged, "Hurry up and see how the pills are doing." Tang Jing chuckled and waved his hand. Voila! Rays of light surged like the clouds in the sky. Several pills rose up and floated above the 9 revolving pill furnace. The elixir was completely white like white jade. It emitted a gentle white light and a fragrance filled the air. Is this the 9 transformations soul return pill? Fang Shishir smacked her lips and exclaimed. The others had the same reaction. They all exclaimed, "So beautiful, so magical." Tang Jing also felt guilty as he stared at the 9 transformations soul return pellet. The 9 transformations soul return pellet was successfully refined, and not just one pellet, but a total of 36. This far exceeded his expectations. Empyrean fairy's eyes were also filled with amazement. She had originally estimated that Tang Zheng would only be able to refine around 20 pills. But the final result was far beyond her expectations. She looked at Tang Zheng in disbelief. She secretly muttered to herself, his cultivation is still lacking. How can his alchemy skills be so good? Moreover, this was his first time refining the 9 transformations soul return pill. He wasn't even familiar with the pill recipe, yet it had such an effect. Strange, strange. Could it be that celestials are so blessed by the heavens? Her heart was filled with jealousy. Tang Jing obviously didn't know what Empyrean fairy was feeling. Otherwise he would be extremely happy. After all, the Empyrean fairy was so mysterious and powerful. Even she was jealous. This was one of life's greatest blessings. Don't just stare. Hurry up and take them. The Empyrean fairy urged. Tang Jing seemed to have awoken from a dream. With a wave of his hand, the 36 pills flew into the bottle in his hand. The light that filled the sky suddenly converged on the 9 transformations pill furnace. In the blink of an eye, the light dissipated, completely absorbed by the 9 transformations pill furnace. Immediately, the 9 transformations pill furnace began to emit a faint light. The beasts carved on the walls of the furnace seemed to come alive and actually began to move. Whoosh, whoosh. They left the 9 transformations pill furnace and transformed into clumps of illusory figures. They either flew or ran along the walls of the furnace. This scene immediately attracted everyone's attention. Tang Zhang's heart moved, faintly feeling that something was about to happen. Mom, it's so beautiful. Look at those animals, they've all come alive. Nana was like a little fairy, clapping her hands and cheering excitedly. Her big eyes stared at those illusory figures as if she wanted to rush up and hug them. Mu Hongyan hurriedly pulled her daughter and whispered, "Nana, be quiet. Don't disturb your brother." She was also overwhelmed with emotions. Although her deceased husband was also a cultivator, his strength could not be compared to Tang Zhang's. Moreover, he was usually very secretive. When he was cultivating, he did not even allow her to approach him. He was not like Tang Zhang, who was so open and candid, allowing them to watch as they pleased. In comparison, her deceased husband was completely inferior. This made Tang Zhang seem even more extraordinary. The Empyrean fairy stared at the 9 transformations pill furnace. Her cherry lips could not help but open as she exclaimed, "The 9 transformations pill furnace is about to be upgraded." A few days ago, she had solemnly vowed that it would be very difficult for the 9 transformations pill furnace to return to its former peak. But in less than 2 days, all of this had happened. Without a doubt, her estimation was wrong. This did not mean that her eyesight was not good, but that she had judged Tang Zhang by the standards of an ordinary person. This was the root of her miscalculation. Tang Zhang was not an ordinary person. Even the average genius could not be compared to him. Therefore, the Empyrean fairy's experience was not applicable. When the others heard this, they became even more excited. Today was really an eye-opener. Not only did they see alchemy, they could also personally witness the upgrade of a magic weapon. To them, this was not an easy matter. The corners of Tang Zhang's mouth rose. As the owner of the 9 transformations pill furnace, he naturally knew that the Empyrean fairy's words were not false. The 9 transformations pill furnace was really upgrading. All of this was due to the light that filled the room. This light contained a powerful medicinal property which was absorbed by the 9 transformations pill furnace, allowing it to complete its upgrade. In fact, it was not impossible for the 9 transformations pill furnace to upgrade. As long as enough pills or magic weapons were refined, the accumulation of medicinal properties would slowly influence the 9 transformations pill furnace. Then, there would be a day when it would return to the peak of a heaven-grade magic weapon. But at that time, the accumulation of medicinal properties was not something that could be done overnight. But now, just because the 9 transformations soul-returning pill was refined, the 9 transformations pill furnace's accumulation of medicinal properties was completed, resulting in a qualitative change. The phantoms of the birds and beasts flew towards the 9 transformations pill furnace. Then, they turned into carvings that floated on the walls of the furnace. They were vivid and lifelike, as if they were living creatures. The 9 transformations pill furnace's light converged and stopped rotating. An ordinary person could feel that it had changed. It was more mysterious than before, and its dark exterior gave off an indescribable feeling. Heaven-grade magic weapon. Tang Zhang could not help but shout out. At that time, he had accidentally picked up a bargain and bought the 9 transformations pill furnace from the auction. He never thought that it would be of such great help to him. Whether it was the life-continuing pill, the spirit-gathering pill, the dragon yuan pill, or now the 9 transformations soul-returning pill, if he did not have the 9 transformations pill furnace, then all of these would have been like flowers in a mirror and the moon in the water. He subconsciously stroked the 9 transformations pill furnace. A strong resonance caused the true qi in his body to boil. It was as if he had become one with the furnace. The Empyrean fairy's expression returned to normal as she said, "Don't be happy too early. The 9 transformations pill furnace has not truly recovered to its peak." These words were like a bucket of cold water that was poured over his head. It immediately pulled Tang Zhang back from his excitement. He looked at the Empyrean fairy in bewilderment and asked, "Isn't it already a heaven-grade magic weapon?" How come it has not recovered to its peak? Hee hee. The Empyrean fairy chuckled twice. You think that the 9 transformations pill furnace has recovered to its peak? It seems that you do not understand its original glory. The real reason why the 9 transformations pill furnace was praised by others, other than being a heaven-grade magic weapon, was because it had an artifact spirit. Artifact spirit? Tang Zheng was shocked. What is an artifact spirit? The Empyrean fairy looked at him in disbelief and said, You don't know what an artifact spirit is? Doesn't your war spirit sword have an artifact spirit? Tang Zheng's heart moved and he suddenly realized that the artifact spirit she was talking about was the sword spirit. The weapon spirit was also known as the artifact spirit. It was the most important component of a weapon. What is so special about the 9 transformations pill furnace that has an artifact spirit? Tang Zheng did not pay attention to the disbelief and ridicule in the Empyrean fairy's eyes and humbly asked for advice. Seeing that he was sincere and did not seem to be lying, the Empyrean fairy finally believed him and said, With an artifact spirit, the 9 transformations pill furnace has an artifact spirit. When it refines pills or magic weapons, the owner does not need to worry about it. Everything can be handed over to the artifact spirit and it will automatically refine the pills. Whether it is the control of the heat or the quantity, it will be perfect. The same materials can be used to refine more pills and the quality of the pills will be higher. Do you think the artifact spirit is important? Tang Zheng subconsciously nodded and asked, Then how can a magic weapon have an artifact spirit? Not all magic weapons can have an artifact spirit. This is an opportunity for the owner and also an opportunity for the magic weapon itself. There is no unified conclusion and there is no specific method. The Empyrean fairy explained. Tang Zheng bitterly smiled, So it depends on luck? You can say that, but obviously your luck is not bad. The war spirit sword has an artifact spirit and is already a high-quality heaven-grade magic weapon. It is just that I see that the heaven-grade flying immortal sword technique that you are practicing is not able to fully display its power. The Empyrean fairy said without any trace of politeness. Tang Zheng suddenly froze as this was somewhat out of his expectations. He always thought that the heaven-grade flying immortal sword technique was a very powerful sword technique that accompanied him through ups and downs and killed countless enemies. But from the Empyrean fairy's words, this sword technique was not much. No matter who it was, when they heard this news, their heart would be somewhat depressed. Chapter 8:13. Seeing the Empyrean fairy's solemn vow, Tang Zheng curiously asked, Then do you know of any sword technique in this world that is more compatible with battle spirit? Your battle spirit contains a powerful yin qi. If you can find a sword technique that is compatible with the yin qi, you will be able to display its power. The Empyrean fairy muttered. Is there such a sword technique? Of course there is. The Empyrean fairy nodded her head as if it was a matter of course. There are millions of sword techniques in this world, and there are many exquisite sword techniques. But to find a sword technique that suits your heart, you must have a great opportunity. Tang Zheng shook his head, thinking that it was fine. After talking for so long, he still had to rely on luck. There was no ready-made target for him to pursue. However, the harvest this time was already great. Not only did he successfully refine the 9 Revolutions soul returning pill, but the 9 Revolutions pill furnace had also been upgraded to a heaven-grade treasure. Tang Zheng put away the 9 Revolutions pill furnace and focused his attention on the 9 Revolutions soul returning pill, saying, Does this pill really have such a miraculous ability? If you don't believe me, you can try it. How? Kill yourself. When your life is hanging by a thread, take the 9 Revolutions soul returning pill. The Empyrean fairy lightly said. Tang Zheng was stunned, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He shook his head and said, Forget it, I won't try it. I'll try it and believe you. But, there are a total of 36 pills here. Everyone who sees it will have a share. These people were all very important to him. Although the 9 Revolutions soul returning pill was important, it was not as important as these people. So, he unceremoniously decided to share it with them. Everyone was shocked and said, How can this be? especially Mu Hongyan, who shook her head like a rattledrum. Although she had always been in charge of Tang Zheng's business, she could not compare to Fang Shishir, who had a close relationship with Tang Zheng. So, she never thought that she would also have a share. Although Tang Zheng generously offered to share some with her, she still refused without hesitation. Fang Shishir, Wu, and Lu Qingmei all shook their heads at the same time and said, "You often encounter danger. This kind of miraculous medicine is most suitable for you." The three women had the same thoughts about Tang Zheng. They cared about him more than they cared about themselves. How could they accept such an important treasure? On the contrary, and didn't back down and said in surprise, "Really? Thank you very much. Don't worry. Isn't there a saying in Hua Xia that reciprocity demands reciprocity? I will definitely give you a generous gift in return." Seeing that and refused without hesitation, the other women glared at her. How could there be such a rude person? Seeing this, Tang Zheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He advised, "I'm serious, everyone has a share. Although this 9 revolutions soul returning pill is an extremely rare miraculous medicine, it's not as important as you guys." Wow, such romantic words. And clasped her hands together and praised, "I'll give you a kiss as a reward." Saying this, she passionately threw herself at him. Tang Zheng's expression slightly changed as he hurriedly retreated a few steps to avoid her. What a joke. With so many women watching, if he wanted to be hacked to death, then he would have to accept this kiss. As expected, Fang Shishir and the others fiercely glared at and before looking at Tang Zheng with an unkind expression. Tang Zheng hurriedly changed the topic and said, "Everyone, don't argue. I have already made up my mind. Of course, I will still leave some for future troubles." The people who were important to him were not limited to the people in front of him. There were only 36 9 revolutions soul returning pills. Seeing that Tang Zheng had already made up his mind, Fang Shishir said, "Then I only want one." Without a doubt, with her taking the lead and stating the amount, the others were too embarrassed to ask for more. After all, she was Tang Zheng's official girlfriend. And was a bit disappointed and muttered, "Good things come in pairs. 2 pills would be great." The others pretended not to hear. Seeing that Tang Zheng was sincere, they could not refuse. Tang Zheng originally wanted to give everyone 2 pills, but since they insisted, he did not force them. He gave everyone 1 9 revolutions soul returning pill, giving them a total of 7 pills. "I also get one?" Empyrean Fairy looked at the 9 revolutions soul returning pill in her hand in shock. "You don't want it?" "I want it." Empyrean Fairy impatiently put it away. She understood the value of this pill better than the others. Although it was only 1 pill, it was still a treasure that could not be exchanged for even with money. "This is what you deserve. Not only did you provide the pill recipe, you also protected me. Being able to successfully refine the 9 revolutions soul returning pill was because of your indispensable contribution. In fact, you deserve more." Tang Zheng sincerely said. 1 pill is more than enough." Empyrean Fairy was not greedy. "I only moved my lips. You were the one who did the work and thought." Everyone returned to their rooms to rest. Fang Shishir lay in his embrace and took out the 9 revolutions soul returning pill, saying, "I'll return this to you. You know I have no use for it." She had coincidentally inherited the vampire's ability to heal wounds, so it was extremely difficult to harm her. She felt that she had no use for it, so she left it to Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng pushed it away and said, "Since I've given it to you, then keep it well. As for what you want to do with it, it's up to you. But it's more important to you." Fang Shishir said anxiously, "I still have 29 pills." Seeing his insistence, Fang Shishir had no choice but to accept it. The next day, everyone either attended classes or went to school. Tang Zheng stayed at home to practice martial arts and digest the gains he had made during this time. The Empyrean Fairy brought Nana to practice martial arts in the courtyard. Nana practiced martial arts methodically and had a bit of a stance. This set of martial arts was used to strengthen her body's muscles and bones. It was only because she was still young that she could use this method. If she were an adult, it might not be possible. The Empyrean fairy taught according to the individual's ability. She could be considered a great teacher. Suddenly, a person stood at the door and looked inside. When he saw the two beauties, one big and one small, his eyes widened and his throat became dry. He swallowed a large mouthful of saliva. The Empyrean fairy swept her gaze over and coldly looked at the other party. The person smiled shamelessly and said, "May I ask if Tang Jing lives here?" "Who are you?" the Empyrean fairy asked coldly. Looking at this person's ugly face, she was a little hesitant. She knew that this person must be a scoundrel. "I'm Tang Zhang's counselor. My surname is Yan and my name is Liang." Yan Liang introduced himself politely, but he was cursing indignantly in his heart. What did Tang Zhang do? Not only did he have the favor of Princess Anne, but he also lived in such a luxurious villa. This was something he could never afford in his life. What was more infuriating was that he was hiding such a beautiful and fairy-like woman in his house. He had all the good things in the world. Yan Liang wished that he could replace Tang Zheng, but he could only think about it as it was impossible for him to do so. Ever since he saw the intimate relationship between Tang Zheng and Princess Annie, he no longer had any thoughts of resistance. If he had a choice, he would never want to see Tang Zheng and make trouble for himself. But this time, he had a huge mission. Even if he was unwilling, he had to come. He spent a lot of effort to find out where Tang Zheng lived. When he first saw the villa, he thought he had come to the wrong place. Tang Zheng was a student, and it was said that his family was not well off. How could he live in such a luxurious villa? He must be trying to please Princess Anne. That's why such a good thing happened to him. He guessed, thinking that he was smart. The Empyrean fairy did not even look at him, nor did she invite him in. She just left him at the door and shouted into the house, "Tang Zheng, someone is looking for you." Tang Zheng heard the voice and walked out. When he saw Yan Liang, he could not help but be stunned. What was he trying to do here? Yan Liang was good at currying favor. After Professor Qi lost power, he was very ugly and made things difficult for Professor Qi. So Tang Zheng had taught him a lesson. If Professor Qi had not stopped him, Tang Zheng would have made him feel even worse. However, since then, Yan Liang basically avoided him and did not dare to show his face in front of him. Today, the sun must have risen from the west. He actually dared to come to his house. Tang Zheng strode to the door, looked at him indifferently and asked, "What are you looking for me for?" Yan Liang quickly took out a brand new student ID and handed it to Tang Zheng. He affectionately said, "Student Tang Zheng, long time no see. You are getting more and more handsome. Last time, our school did not do a good job and made a mistake in canceling your student status. We have corrected it. This is your new student ID." Tang Zheng did not take it. He looked at the other party and said, "I have been cancelled by Yenqing University. So, I am no longer a student of Yen University." Misunderstanding. This is all a misunderstanding. Yan Liang quickly waved his hand. "We have severely punished the staff who made the mistake. So, your student status is still at Yenqing University. This time, I am here to tell you about this and invite you to come back to school when you're free." Tang Zheng could not help but laugh and said, "This is not a misunderstanding. Didn't the officials announce that I am dead? You are just doing things according to the rules." "Yes, this is an error in the official message transmission. Our school is not the main responsibility. So, we hereby explain to student Tang Zheng that your student status will be restored," Yan Liang said, nodding his head like he was pounding garlic. This time, the principal gave a strict order to invite Tang Zheng back to school. This person's experience was too unimaginable. He had actually gained the favor of Princess Anne. If they knew that he was not dead but still deleted his student status, what would Princess Anne think? A famous foreign royal princess studying at Yenqing University was a good thing that many universities in the country would fight over. During this period of time, Yenqing University's influence in the country had significantly increased. Among them, Princess Anne's name played a pivotal role. So, if Princess Anne left halfway, it would definitely be a huge loss to the school. One of the best ways to keep Princess Anne was to keep Tang Zheng. If they knew that Tang Zheng was not dead but still deleted his student status, then Princess Anne would be angry and the school would suffer. So, the important task of inviting Tang Zheng back to school fell on the instructor, Yan Liang. Chapter 8:14. Yan Liang left in a daze. When he returned, he was scolded by the principal for not doing his job well. However, Tang Zheng was not in the mood to care about Yan Liang. The difference in status between the two was like heaven and earth. He would rather cultivate in peace than deal with this kind of person. He used the sky-swallowing technique to absorb other people's energy to increase his own cultivation twice. This was a good thing, but also a bad thing. He realized that he was relying too much on the sky-swallowing technique. This was not a good idea. If he continued to use this method to increase his cultivation, it would shake his foundation. The losses outweighed the gains. Therefore, he concentrated on cultivating and consolidating his cultivation. The next day, the school leaders came to find him. Tang Zheng closed the door and refused to see them. They seemed to want to send him back to school. Tang Zheng snorted and was unmoved. The only people in Yenqing University that he was reluctant to leave were his classmates and Professor Qi Shaoan. He was not familiar with the others, so naturally, he had no feelings for them. As for the school leaders, after seeing what they did to Professor Qi, he did not have a good impression of them. The school leaders were rebuffed and left dejectedly. After wholeheartedly cultivating for a few days, Tang Zheng's harvest was plentiful as he consolidated his cultivation. Moreover, his cultivation showed signs of reaching the next level. He believed that if he put in more effort, he would definitely be able to reach the 5th grade of Jindan. After returning to the capital for a few days, he still had not gone to see Yi Dingdang. Coincidentally, he refined the 9 transformations soul return pill. When night fell, Yi Dingdang had already returned home from school. She saw Tang Zheng standing downstairs and was pleasantly surprised like a swallow flying into his arms. "Why are you here?" "Because I missed you." "Humph, at least you have a conscience." During this period of time, she really missed Tang Zheng. After the intimate skin-to-skin contact, the relationship between the two broke through that barrier. Tang Zheng's figure would often appear in Yi Dingdang's mind, so much so that she would occasionally laugh foolishly in class. "Come, let's go upstairs," Tang Zheng said. Yi Dingdang shook her head. "No, let's kiss first." She raised her head and looked at him expectantly. Looking at the beautiful face that was so close to him, Tang Zheng shook his head. She was different from other people. She was passionate and dared to love and hate. The other girls wouldn't ask him for a kiss in public. However, this feeling was really good. He lowered his head and kissed her. After tasting the forbidden fruit for the first time, Yi Dingdang was immediately aroused. She hooked her arms around his neck and responded to him passionately. Cough, cough. There was a sudden cough. Yi Dingdang bounced back as if she had been electrocuted. She looked at the person in bewilderment. This voice was too familiar. It was actually her father, Yi Tianlei. Yi Tianlei looked at the two awkwardly. When did the two of them become so close? Tang Zheng's skin was thick enough. His face didn't turn red and his heart didn't skip a beat. It was as if nothing had happened. He nodded at Yi Tianlei and calmly said, "Uncle Yi, you're back." Yi Tianlei looked at Tang Zheng with a complicated expression. Tang Zheng was the benefactor of the Ye family and was also his boss. Moreover, Feng Xinyang always wanted him to be her son-in-law. Thus, Tang Zheng's identity was too complicated. Even if he bumped into their good thing, he couldn't say anything. He faintly sighed and said, "You're here. I haven't come to see you in a long time. I just happened to be free today. Then let's go upstairs." After Yi Tianlei finished speaking, he took the lead and walked in. Yi Dingdang fiercely glared at Tang Zheng and complained in a voice as soft as a mosquito, you only came to see me when you were free. You didn't come especially to see me. How could that be? I came especially to see you. Hang, at least you have a conscience. Yi Dingdang happily said. How could this be hidden from Yi Tianlei's ears? He helplessly shook his head and thought that his children and grandchildren had their own fortune. He couldn't care less. Moreover, this was a good thing that his wife was happy to see. As expected, Feng Xinyang saw the three of them enter together. Her face was about to bloom with a smile as she quickly welcomed Tang Jing in. Yi Dingdang saw her mother's appearance. She curled her lips and said, Feng Xinyang, why do I feel that you treat Tang Jing better than you treat your daughter? Feng Xinyang happily said, of course. Don't you see how outstanding the little handsome is? Not only is he handsome, he's also young and promising. If I don't treat this kind of young talent well, who else would I treat well? But I'm your daughter. Yi Dingdang argued. I've already raised you for more than 10 years. I've long seen enough. Of course the little handsome is even more interesting. Feng Xinyang said. Forget it. I've been defeated by you. Biased. Cough cough. Yi Tianlei dryly coughed twice and said, let the young people talk. Why are you interfering? Go and cook. Feng Xinyang coldly glared and said, Yi Tianlei, when did you command me? Yi Tianlei did not dare to contradict her. He embarrassedly smiled, how am I commanding you? Isn't this a suggestion? That's more like it. Feng Xinyang's face lit up with joy again, little handsome, you and Dingdang play for a while. Aunt Feng will immediately go and prepare the meal. Go, to my room. Yi Dingdang did not allow any explanation as she pulled Tang Zheng into the room. Yi Tianlei wanted to stop her but was interrupted by Feng Xinyang. Why are you stopping me? How can you let the two of them be in the same room? You don't know what I just saw. Yi Tianlei anxiously said. What did you see? They were kissing. Yi Tianlei hesitated for a moment before saying. Feng Xinyang's eyes lit up and said, Wah, this girl has finally been enlightened. Not bad, she's very similar to this old mother's style. Yi Tianlei helplessly rolled his eyes and said, Is there a mother like you? Other mothers are strictly guarded, deeply afraid that their daughter will be at a disadvantage. You, on the other hand, can't wait to push your daughter away. Little handsome is so outstanding. If other mothers met such a good son-in-law, I'm afraid they would be more powerful than me. If they were as stubborn as you, little handsome would have long been seduced away by other women. Where would there be a place for our daughter? You have to fight for your own happiness. Women are no exception. But she is after all a girl. She has to be reserved. Yi Tianlei's words had not yet finished when he was fiercely grabbed by Feng Xinyang's waist and said, You're saying that I wasn't reserved in the past? If I wanted to be reserved, where would there be a place for you? Yi Tianlei did not think that he would suffer such an unexpected calamity. He quickly begged for mercy, I didn't mean that. You misunderstood. Hang, I misunderstood. Then come to the kitchen and explain clearly. Otherwise, you won't have a share in tonight's dinner. Feng Xinyang's heroic spirit was high-spirited, valiant and heroic. Yi Tianlei was helpless as he was dragged to the kitchen to work as a laborer and did not have the chance to interfere with Tang Zheng and Yi Dingdang. The two people were already passionately entangled together. They rolled on the bed. Their limbs were entangled together. Their lips were tightly pressed together as they passionately kissed. Yi Dingdang's breath was like orchids. Tang Zheng's passion was like fire. Yi Dingdang was wearing a pair of denim shorts. Tang Zheng's slender legs fell into Yi Dingdang's palms. Her skin was as smooth as silk and as white as jade. It made Tang Zheng forget to go back. His other hand was not well behaved. It drilled into the t-shirt, attacking and conquering, bravely climbing to the peak. Don't, they are outside. Yi Dingdang hurriedly grabbed his hand, trying to stop him. It's okay. The door is closed. You're not allowed to do that. You can only touch. Otherwise, I'll kick you off the bed. Yi Dingdang took a step back. Can you bear to kick me? Tang Zheng said shamelessly. Yi Dingdang winked slyly. You can try. Tang Zheng knew Yi Dingdang's temper. He compromised. Then let's not try. I'll just touch. Yi Dingdang was like a victorious general as she proudly raised her head. But in the next moment, she took a deep breath and tenderly said, Be gentle. Tang Zheng used a bit of force and said, Do you still dare to kick me? I want to kick. Yi Dingdang struggled and refused to admit defeat. Huh, little girl, you still don't want to admit defeat, right? Tang Zheng said with a smirk. He used more force in his hand. The warmth and softness of his hand was refreshing and made his heart sway. I don't want to admit defeat. Yi Dingdang bit her lips and grabbed with the back of her hand. Tang Zheng sucked in a breath of cold air and cried out in alarm, Wah, are you trying to murder your husband? He looked down and saw that her small hands had actually slipped into his pants and grabbed his lifeline. Yi Dingdang smirked. Now you know how powerful I am. Who wants to admit defeat? I admit defeat. Tang Zheng hung his head dejectedly. You're murdering your husband. You're ruining your happiness for the rest of your life. Who said you're my husband? Humph, you're so thick-skinned and shameless. Stop fooling around. Otherwise, you'll really break it. Besides, if you keep doing this, what if I can't control myself and take you on the spot? Then come at me. Yi Dingdang deliberately pinched Tang Zheng and winked teasingly. Tang Zheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why didn't I realize you were so naughty before? Even if you dare, I wouldn't dare. Humph, coward. You dare say I'm a coward? When there's no one around, see how I'll deal with you. Tang Zheng threatened. Come at me. Who's afraid of who? Yi Dingdang shrugged and didn't admit defeat. Knock knock. There was a knock on the door. Feng Xinyang shouted from outside. Come out and eat. Okay, coming. The two hurriedly got off the bed and tidied up their messy clothes. Yi Dingdang's face was still a bit red. She glared fiercely at Tang Zheng before the two walked out. The four of them sat around the table. Feng Xinyang constantly urged Tang Zheng to eat more. She gave him food with incomparable enthusiasm. Yi Tianlei stuffed food into his mouth without tasting it. He glanced at his daughter from the corner of his eye and found that she was looking at Tang Zheng with love. He couldn't help but sigh. Her status in the family was getting worse day by day. She was practically like air. He couldn't help but feel a bit sour. Most fathers would have complex emotions. A grown woman can't be kept. It seems like this woman won't be kept for long. The meal was finished amidst laughter and chatting. After chatting for a while, Tang Zheng stood up and said his goodbyes. Yi Dingdang took the initiative to send him downstairs. In the darkness, the two hid behind a big tree to prevent others from seeing them. You've only been here for a while and you're already leaving. You really don't have a conscience. Yi Dingdang bitterly said. Chapter 8:15. When Yi Dingdang heard this, she heavily punched him and said, What nonsense are you thinking about? Tang Zheng did not allow her to explain as he pulled her hand and said while walking, It would be bad if we were discovered here. There is a hotel nearby, so let's go to the hotel. Hooligan, a complete hooligan. Yi Dingdang did not refuse and allowed him to pull her into a nearby hotel. Bang! Just as the door was closed, Yi Dingdang cried out in alarm as she was picked up by the waist. You are too impatient. Tang Zheng gasped for breath and said, Who told you to provoke me at home? Let's see who wins and who loses. Hein, do you think I'm afraid of you? Isn't there a saying that there are only tired cows but no plowed fields? Yi Dingdang proudly said. Tang Zheng did not know whether to laugh or cry as he slapped her butt and said, Who taught you this? The people in the dorm said it. It seems like you have learned bad things from them. You are the worst. Then I'll show you how bad I am. Let's see if your field is better or if my cow is more powerful. Tang Zheng tyrannically said. Yi Dingdang hooked her finger and said, Come, who's afraid of who? After a long drought, Yi Dingdang tasted the sweetness of the fruit and became more familiar with it. Very quickly, she became one with Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng felt a strong attractive force coming from below, making him feel as if his soul was about to leave his body. This. Tang Zheng was startled as he looked at her in disbelief. Yi Dingdang's face was full of spring as she charmingly asked, Why aren't you moving? Do you feel anything strange? What's strange? Yi Dingdang did not understand. Tang Zheng took a deep breath and suppressed his strange thoughts as he continued to gallop. Suddenly, that feeling came again as if his soul was about to leave his body. Moreover, his pure yang energy was flowing from below into Yi Dingdang's body. Originally, the two of them did not have this feeling the first time, but this time it was so strong that he was puzzled. You are absorbing my pure yang energy, Tang Zheng said. Yi Dingdang's mind was not clear as she asked in a daze, What pure yang energy? Tang Zheng gave a rough explanation and said, How did you absorb my pure yang energy? In the past, the pure yang energy in his body had been mediated by absorbing pure yin energy. It was extremely difficult for the pure yang energy to leak out. Other than when Qin Shi Huang had absorbed his power, he had also absorbed the pure yang energy. Other than that, the pure yang energy had always been firmly rooted in his body. Yi Dingdang was also confused and said, I also don't know. Suddenly, her heart skipped a beat as she shyly said, However, every time we do this, my Jade Woman's Heart Sutra will automatically activate. Especially after we did it last time, my power increased by 2 levels. Ah. Your power has increased by 2 levels? Tang Zheng took a closer look, and sure enough, her power had indeed increased by a lot. But his strength did not change last time. Why was this? Suddenly, his heart moved as he remembered a long time ago when Tian Chanzi occasionally mentioned something. Yi Dingdang cultivated the Jade Heart Sutra and would give him a pleasant surprise in the future. Could this be the pleasant surprise that Tian Chanzi mentioned? Yi Dingdang cultivated the Jade Heart Sutra and could actually absorb his pure yang energy. This was more effective than absorbing the pure yin energy from Yi Dingdang's body. Removing the firewood from under the cauldron, if the pure yang energy was absorbed, it would naturally reduce the danger of his body exploding. Tang Zheng did not know whether to laugh or cry. The heaven monk was truly cunning. He actually did not tell him, causing him to almost forget about it. Furthermore, the last time the two of them were having fun together, they did not have any strange feelings, so he forgot about it. Now it seems that Tian Chanzi's words were not false and gave him a big pleasant surprise. But whether or not this pure yang energy was harmful to Yi Dingdang was not certain. Do you feel uncomfortable? Tang Zheng asked with concern. Yi Dingdang punched him and said, Rogue, after doing this you still ask me if I feel comfortable. She bit her lips and spat out 2 words, comfortable. Tang Zheng knew that he had misunderstood and awkwardly explained, That's not what I meant. I was asking if there was any problem with your body. Yi Dingdang finally understood his words and suspiciously looked at him, asking, No, I just feel a warm feeling in my body, as if there is a warm current flowing through my entire body. Last time I didn't feel it that strongly, but this time I feel it even more strongly. Tang Zheng guessed that this was definitely because of the pure yang energy. However, since she did not have any major problems, then there was no problem. It was just that the suction force was very long-lasting and Yi Dingdang did not feel it at all. This made it difficult for Tang Zheng, and not long after, he was defeated. Yi Dingdang unhappily pouted and complained, Why can't I? Did you do too many bad things outside? I heard my roommate say that men do too many bad things outside, that's why they can't do it. Tang Zheng did not know whether to laugh or cry and said, Don't listen to your roommate's nonsense. It's not that I can't do it. He lamented in his heart and finally recalled the teasing expression in the depths of Tian Chanzi's eyes when he said that he would give him a pleasant surprise. Perhaps his so-called pleasant surprise was not only Yi Dingdang being able to absorb pure yang energy, but also the attractive force that made him throw away his armor. Tian Chanzi, you are really bad. You want to see me make a fool of myself, right? I won't let you get your way. Tang Zheng took a deep breath and said, if you dare to say that I can't do it, then just wait for the storm to come. After he finished speaking, he threw himself onto Yi Dingdang's body. Tang Zheng did not win one battle after another. In the end, his legs went soft and he ended the battle with Yi Dingdang's laughter. He lay on the bed, exhausted. Yi Dingdang lay on his chest, the corners of her mouth raised into a sweet smile and said, what they said was true. There are only tired cows and no plowed fields. I'll squeeze you dry. Let's see if you can still be romantic in the future. Tang Zheng wanted to cry but had no tears. How could this bullshit Jade Girl Heart Sutra be so powerful? Jade Girl, it seemed more like a lustful woman. The two rested for a moment. Yi Dingdang was satisfied as she held on to Tang Zheng's hand and walked out of the hotel. When they returned home, Yi Dingdang looked at his weak appearance and deliberately said, how about we fight again tomorrow? Tang Zheng hurriedly waved his hand. Killing the goose that lays the golden eggs is not a good thing. Hang, are you scared now? Little guy, let's see if you dare to be naughty in the future. Be good and listen to me, do you understand? Yi Dingdang patted his face and teased him with the tone of a big sister. Tang Zheng did not know whether to laugh or cry. This time, he fell into a big mess. The next time he met Tian Chanzi, he would definitely find him to settle the score. You should go back quickly. Otherwise, they will be worried. Tang Zheng urged. I'll let you go this time. You should go back too. Yi Dingdang took the initiative to kiss him and then happily went upstairs. Yi Tianlei and Feng Xinyang were sitting in the living room. When they saw her enter, two pairs of eyes stared at her. Yi Dingdang guiltily looked at the two and said, I'm going to sleep. Seeing their daughter enter the room, the husband and wife looked at each other. Just now, Tang Zheng and Yi Dingdang had left for 2 to 3 hours. The husband and wife's hearts were filled with apprehension as they waited for a long time. Do you think they? Yi Tianlei nervously asked. Feng Xinyang recalled her daughter's appearance just now. She must have been nourished by the rain. She half-heartedly said, it's a child's matter. Why do you care so much? Why wouldn't I care? Dingdang is my daughter. Seeing her husband's excited appearance, Feng Xinyang did not care at all and said, isn't this a good thing? Now that I've firmly grasped the little handsome brother, he won't be able to escape. Yi Tianlei fiercely grabbed a handful of hair and said in distress, but she is my daughter. A grown daughter cannot be kept. I'm going to lose her. It was said that a daughter was a father's lover in his previous life. Seeing his daughter grow up and fall into the arms of another man, Yi Tianlei's heart was indeed uncomfortable and full of jealousy. In the next few days, Tang Zheng's body was peaceful. He had absorbed a lot of pure yang energy. Yin and yang were in harmony and his skills were becoming more and more profound. He sat cross-legged in the room and operated his mysterious art. The ancient clear heaven scroll's power flowed along his meridians and flowed through his limbs and bones. The dragon god's secret art also played its role. His body flickered with a golden light and occasionally dragon scales would appear on his skin. The true qi in his body steadily rose. This time, it was all from his own cultivation and not from other people's bodies. Therefore, the feeling was particularly different. Whoosh! Suddenly, the golden light on his body surged and the three-clawed golden dragon broke through his head. It shook its head and wagged its tail as it soared into the air and swam around the room. Strong winds blew and the golden light was dazzling. His aura steadily rose, especially the majestic dragon's aura that caused the atmosphere in the room to change. If a person stood in front of him, they would definitely kneel down. He was like an emperor. Especially with the golden dragon circling around him, the dragon's aura was grand. It made people tremble in fear and involuntarily want to submit to him. Of course, this was only for ordinary people or people with weak cultivation. If it was a strong person, they would naturally be able to resist this kind of power. Unknowingly, the golden light on the golden dragon's body became brighter and brighter. A ball of golden light gathered at its abdomen and a dragon claw stretched out from the golden light. The fourth dragon claw. Although Tang Zheng's eyes were closed, he could clearly feel everything. When he saw the birth of the fourth dragon claw, he was overjoyed. This meant that the dragon god's secret art had reached the fourth layer and he could ascend to the fourth floor of Langya Pavilion. There were countless treasures hidden in Langya Pavilion. If he could ascend to the fourth floor, what kind of treasures would he find? This made him extremely excited and unable to calm down. The fourth dragon claw was still growing. The shining golden dragon scales were especially dazzling. Roar! A dragon's roar reverberated in the room. All the furniture was instantly shattered and turned into fine powder. The Empyrean fairy jumped up from the sofa in shock and rushed to Tang Zheng's door like lightning. The dragon's roar was even clearer. This dragon's roar did not spread too far, but with her hearing, she naturally heard it clearly. Dragon's roar. Her expression changed. What's going on? She could not help but recall the scene in the tomb. Tang Zheng seemed to be about to transform into a dragon. Although he did not explain afterwards, she was still very curious. Could it be that the golden dragon had appeared again? Chapter 8:16. The Empyrean fairy suppressed her curiosity and stood at the door like a puppet. She stared at the door as if she wanted to see through it. The fourth claw of the golden dragon had completely grown out. Tang Zheng had broken through to the fourth stage of the dragon god technique. The four-clawed golden dragon shone with a golden light. The dragon vein running through the dragon's body was particularly clear. The ninth main meridian in Tang Zheng's body was also shining brightly and complementing the dragon vein. Back then, Tang Zheng had absorbed the dragon vein of the Qinling Mountains and merged it with his ninth main meridian. The dragon vein was the ninth main meridian that connected him and the golden dragon. The golden dragon opened its mouth and roared. It shook its head and wagged its tail as it dove toward Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was bathed in golden light. The golden dragon swelled and rushed into the dragon seal. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it circled around for a while. Then, it calmed down and circled around in the dragon roar. The golden light dissipated and Tang Zheng returned to normal. However, there was an occasional flash of golden light in his eyes that had a captivating charm. He channeled his energy slightly and the shocking dragon's might was completely withdrawn. He returned to the appearance of an ordinary young man. Phew! He heaved a heavy sigh. The scene just now was truly shocking, causing his heart to beat wildly. The higher the level of the dragon god technique, the more unexpected the scene of each breakthrough would be. 7. And now that the dragon god technique has reached the fourth stage, I can enter the fourth floor of the Langya Pavilion. He was extremely excited. What exactly was hidden on the fourth floor of the Langya Pavilion? Dong dong. The sound of knocking on the door interrupted his thoughts. The Empyrean fairy had already discovered that the aura in the room had disappeared, so she knocked on the door. Tang Zheng, may I come in? Please come in. Tang Zheng stood up. The Empyrean fairy pushed the door open and stared at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze. It was as if she wanted to see through him, but strangely, his cultivation did not change much. What was that dragon roar just now? The Empyrean fairy asked in a deep voice. I heard a dragon roar just now. Tang Zheng nodded and admitted, yes. You summoned the golden dragon again? Tang Zheng hesitated for a moment. I didn't summon it. It ran out on its own when I was cultivating. The Empyrean fairy had seen the golden dragon before, and she had seen it absorb the dragon vein of the Qinling Mountains. Therefore, there was no need to hide it. What martial art do you practice? The Empyrean fairy asked directly. The dragon god art was a divine art of the dragon clan. He could pass it on to Lu Qingmei, but he didn't dare to tell the Empyrean fairy. Sorry, I can't tell you this, Tang Zheng replied. The Empyrean fairy raised her eyebrows. She did not expect Tang Zheng to reject her so cleanly. She looked at him with displeasure. Tang Zheng was helpless. He looked at her and refused to budge. After a long time, the Empyrean fairy knew that she could not force Tang Zheng to compromise, so she asked, I haven't asked you before. Since you practice this mysterious martial art, you must have a close relationship with the Dragon Clan. Do you know what the Dragon Clan represents? What does the Dragon Clan represent? Tang Zheng was confused. Isn't the Dragon Clan the Dragon Clan? The Empyrean fairy looked at him like she was looking at an idiot. You practice the Dragon Clan's martial art, but you don't know what the Dragon Clan represents? In fact, the Empyrean fairy was just casually asking as a test. She didn't expect to get such an answer. It was truly out of her expectations. Moreover, Tang Zheng did not look like he was lying. The Dragon Clan is not a creature of our world. What? Since you know about the big world and the small world, you should know that we are not the only ones in the great wide world. The Dragon Clan is not a creature of our world, but a creature of another world. It's just that a small part of them came to our world at some point in time. Because of their powerful and majestic strength, they were treated as spiritual totems and passed down generation after generation. Tang Zheng was shocked. Even the five-clawed golden dragon did not tell him about this. Perhaps ordinary cultivators were not aware of this, so Tian Chanzi did not mention it. The Empyrean fairy's identity was mysterious, so she knew the secrets. Where did the Dragon Clan come from? Tang Zheng asked curiously. The Empyrean fairy took a deep breath and seemed to be lost in her memories. After a long time, she said slowly, I don't know where they come from, but there are rumors that it's a world of dragons. The strong are everywhere, and the weak can't survive. Tang Zheng could not help but imagine for a moment. The five-clawed golden dragon's strength was already frightening, not to mention the Dragon Clan that was even stronger. What kind of world would it be? In any case, with Tang Zheng's brain, he could not imagine what kind of world it was for the time being. Then why did the Dragon Clan come to our world? Tang Zheng asked again. I don't know. You practice the Dragon Clan's cultivation method, so I wanted to ask you. The Empyrean fairy said. Tang Zheng smiled bitterly, how would I know? If you don't know, then where did your Dragon Clan's cultivation method come from? The Empyrean fairy did not give up and asked. This. It was a coincidence. Tang Zheng said perfunctorily. The Empyrean fairy coldly snorted. She knew that it was useless to ask, so she simply stopped asking. She said meaningfully, the Dragon Clan is very involved. If others know that you practice the Dragon Clan's cultivation method, then you will become a delicious cake. What do you mean? Tang Zheng's head trembled. The Dragon Clan is the spiritual totem of this world. You have also experienced Qin Shi Huang's crazy worship of the Dragon Clan. So, if others know that you not only have a golden dragon, but also a Dragon Clan's cultivation method, what do you think they will do? The Empyrean fairy looked at him with a smile and asked. Tang Zheng's heart trembled. It seemed that he had become Tang Zheng's meat, and everyone wanted to take a bite. He had a lingering fear. Fortunately, he stopped Lu Qingmei from practicing the dragon god's cultivation method in time and changed it to another cultivation method. Otherwise, with her strength, it would be very dangerous for her to be targeted by others. Moreover, he could not reveal the secret of the dragon god's cultivation method in front of others. As for the golden dragon and the dragon seal, unless it was absolutely necessary, he absolutely could not let it appear. Sigh, when the five-clawed golden dragon passed on the dragon god's cultivation method to me, it actually did not remind me of this point. I almost caused a disaster. He could not help but curse in his heart. The Empyrean fairy saw his expression change and said, so, you should take care of yourself. If you want to tell me about your cultivation method at any time, maybe I will remember some things about the Dragon Clan. Tang Zheng did not know whether to laugh or cry. It was obvious that the Empyrean fairy did not finish her words. This was a trick up her sleeve, just like how he also kept a trick up his sleeve and did not tell her everything. The Empyrean fairy left in disappointment. Tang Jing closed the door again and silently circulated his cultivation method, preparing to enter the 4th floor of the Langya Pavilion in one go. The Langya Pavilion had a total of 18 floors, and the Dragon God's cultivation method had 9 layers. Every time he broke through a layer, he would be able to ascend to the 9th floor of the Langya Pavilion. However, there were still 9 floors left in the Langya Pavilion. He was very curious about what was on the top floor, but the 5-clawed golden dragon did not mention anything, so he could not guess. Langya Pavilion. The 3 words floated on the horizontal board above his head. Tang Jing walked into the Langya Pavilion. Dong, dong, dong. He directly crossed the steps and directly arrived at the steps leading to the 4th floor. He took a deep breath, raised his foot, and stepped onto the first step. Nothing happened. Only then did the corners of his mouth overflow with a smile, and he walked up the steps. He reached the 4th floor. When his foot landed on the floor of the 4th floor, the scene in front of him shocked him. When he looked back, the steps leading up had disappeared. He looked at everything in front of him in disbelief. Everything was so familiar. The blackboard, the desks, the classroom, and countless students who were immersed in their studies. Wasn't this the classroom in his high school? He looked around. It was indeed that classroom. He could not be more familiar with it. He spent more than 2 years of his high school life in this classroom. It was an unforgettable time. He fell from the top genius of the school to the bottom of the valley. He became the target of ridicule and even bullying. Many people, from teachers to students, laughed at him. It was a dark period of history. The pressure he endured was unimaginable to ordinary people. On one hand, there was the kind expectations of his grandfather, and on the other hand, there was the contemptuous and mocking gaze. It made him feel as if he was in the fire of hell. Tang Jing, are you daydreaming again? Do you still think you're the top genius of the school? You're affecting other students' studies. You're a rat's poop, spoiling the pot of soup in our class. A piece of chalk hit his head. The familiar voice of the head teacher, Wu Tsuehong, sneered. Her words were sharp, and she mercilessly mocked and ridiculed him. Tang Jing suddenly raised his head and saw the familiar and hateful face of the old witch. A wave of anger rushed to his head. What right do you have to criticize me? Is this how you should be as a teacher? He was about to refute, but a series of ridicule followed one after another. He saw that the people around him were pointing at him and laughing non-stop. Tang Jing, you're a pauper. What right do you have to sit with us? You'll be a pauper your whole life. You should go pick up trash with your stinky grandfather. How dare you sit in this bright and clean classroom? Get lost, the garbage dump is where you belong. Get lost, the garbage dump is where you belong. The others laughed and echoed. They directly pushed Tang Jing, trying to push him out of the classroom. The old witch also came in front of him. That evil face of hers was laughing and scolding. Every word was like a knife, stabbing into his heart. Tang Jing's face and ears were red. He was panting, and his murderous aura surged. He hysterically roared, I'm going to kill you all. Haha, you still want to kill us? You're just a pauper with nothing. We can kill you in minutes. You still want to kill us? Keep dreaming. The crowd mocked. Tang Jing clenched his fists. His veins were exposed, and his eyes flashed with a golden light. With a schwa sound, the war spirit sword appeared in his hand. However, the others were not afraid of him. They continued to provoke him with words, as if they were not afraid of death at all. Chapter 8:17. The sword chi of war spirit was like a rainbow as it fell on the heads of the crowd. How could these people be a match for war spirit? They would definitely be smashed into pieces and turn into a rain of blood. Tang Jing. Suddenly, a delicate voice came from the crowd, and a graceful figure squeezed out with difficulty, standing gracefully in front of him. Tang Jing, you are a good person. You can't hurt them. War spirit hung above her head, but she was not afraid at all. She said, "Tang Zheng, I believe that you won't do such a thing. We are all classmates. Although these people are annoying, you can't put yourself in a desperate situation because of them. Killing them is useless. We have to be strong ourselves. I believe that you will become very strong and once again proudly stand in front of them." Tang Zheng stared at this person without blinking. Fang Shishir. The concern on her face was so real that it touched his heart. His heartstrings trembled as he said, "They are all scolding me and insulting me. I hate them. In this world, there are people who slander me, bully me, humiliate me, laugh at me, look down on me, scold me, lie to me. What should I do? You just have to endure them, let them, avoid them, tolerate them, respect them, and ignore them. After a few more years, look at them." Fang Shishir advised earnestly. "Compared to you, these people are like fireflies compared to the sun and moon. There is no comparison at all. You can't sacrifice yourself for them. It's not worth it." Tang Zheng's heartstrings trembled, and his gaze also changed. These words seemed to have a magical power, and more importantly, there was not the slightest trace of disdain or ridicule between her brows. It was completely from the bottom of her heart. His nature was not bad. After being exposed by her, it was as if a bucket of ice water was poured over his head. His anger went down the drain. Looking at those ugly faces, they could not provoke his anger at all. These people had become insignificant, like passing clouds. With a wave of his hand, they disappeared into thin air. Fang Shishir looked at him, and Wanner smiled. Her figure gradually faded, and in an instant, she disappeared with the others. Tang Zheng was suddenly startled, as if he had just woken up from a dream. He looked around, but there was no classroom. Everything just now was really a golden millet dream. Although it was real, it was particularly distant. He still had a lingering fear. He knew that he was in great danger just now. He was afraid that it was the work of the legendary inner demons. If Fang Shishir hadn't appeared in time to stop him, not only would he have killed those people, but he would also have fallen into the devil's path and suffered Qigong deviation. In the past, he had only heard of people going berserk while practicing martial arts. He had never thought that it would be so close to him. If he went berserk, then he would really be ruined. He looked at the fourth floor. Perhaps the dream just now was caused by the fourth floor. What was so special about this floor? This floor was completely different from the other floors. There were no bookshelves or anything like that. It was completely empty. There was only a huge mirror placed in the middle of the room. It was as tall as a person. Tang Zheng carefully walked in front of the mirror. He could clearly see himself in the mirror, but he was shocked by his own reflection. His appearance in the mirror was naturally the same as his actual appearance, but there were wisps of black smoke rising from his body. What's going on? He was shocked. The inner demons have been destroyed. The devil's power has left the body and turned into ashes. A line of words suddenly appeared on the mirror, firmly attracting Tang Zheng's attention. He suddenly realized that the wisps of black smoke were the devil's power. Humans have inner demons. If they can't defeat the inner demons, then they will be controlled by the inner demons. They will fall into the devil's path and become bloodthirsty. Another line of words appeared, as if to answer Tang Zheng's question. The appearance of the devil's power leaving the body could only be seen in the mirror. It couldn't be seen by looking down. This was very mysterious, and Tang Zheng couldn't take his eyes off the mirror. The wisps of black smoke became fainter and fainter, and finally disappeared completely. Eliminate the devil and protect the Tao. The Exorcist Realm. The Exorcist Mirror. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. Could it be that this mirror was called the Exorcist Mirror, and that the illusion just now was caused by the Exorcist Realm? Moreover, it happened without warning, making it impossible to guard against. It could pry into the most fundamental part of a person's heart. Tang Zheng recalled that scene. Obviously, those years of suffering in school had left an indelible impression in his heart. He thought that he had forgotten, but he didn't expect that it would be imprinted in the depths of his heart and become the inner demons. The exorcist mirror evoked the inner demons, and the murderous intent in his heart surged, almost causing him to go berserk. All of this was thanks to Feng Shusher. Her kindness and beauty had left a mark in his heart back then. Therefore, even if the inner demons acted up, Feng Shusher's usual kindness had triggered the kindness in Tang Zheng's heart. Although he was angry, in the end, there was still kindness in his heart. He was also a kind person. I must thank her properly when I get out. He focused his attention on the exorcist mirror again. There was no difference between his reflection in the mirror and an ordinary mirror. I thought that there would be some more powerful secret on the 4th floor, but I didn't expect that there would only be a mirror. How disappointing. He shook his head and searched everywhere, but found nothing. He didn't know how rare the exorcist mirror was. The fact that it was carefully stored in Langya Pavilion was enough to show how extraordinary the exorcist mirror was. Once the inner demons in a person's body were expelled, cultivation would be twice as effective with half the effort, and there would be no need to worry about going berserk. Going berserk was a problem that many people with high cultivation had to face. If one's cultivation was low, the inner demons would not cause trouble. The higher one's cultivation was, the more likely the inner demons would act up. Without the inner demons causing trouble, Tang Zheng could cultivate smoothly, and his cultivation speed was even faster than before. However, he didn't know this, so he underestimated the power of the exorcist mirror. However, he wasn't in a hurry to leave Langya Pavilion. Cultivating in Langya Pavilion was twice as effective with half the effort, so he certainly wouldn't let go of this opportunity. When he channeled his power, he immediately noticed something strange. In the past, when he channeled his vital qi, he would occasionally feel sluggish, but now it was unimpeded, like a river flowing through a riverbed. It was extremely smooth. This. Could it be because I've gotten rid of my inner demon? His heart stirred, and he immediately thought of this. The vital qi in his body was almost accumulated. Now that the inner demons were no longer causing trouble, his vital qi soared, and the spiritual energy in Langya Pavilion was absorbed into his body in the blink of an eye. Somehow, he had a feeling that his cultivation seemed to have reached the bottleneck of a breakthrough. In order to do it in one go, he took out the crystal stone that the King of Sweden had given him. Crystal stones were of a higher level than spirit stones. They contained a large amount of spiritual energy from heaven and earth, and were rare treasures for cultivators. The King of Sweden had given him one, and the other was for Tian Chanzi. He took out his own crystal stone, held it in the palm of his hand, and channeled his power. Spiritual energy flowed into his body continuously, and his vital qi rose steadily. Whoosh! His whole body shone brightly, and a flame appeared on top of his head. It was a 3rd-grade vital fire. The flame burned fiercely, and the flame jumped, its color becoming darker and darker. Suddenly, the flame rose high, and Tang Zheng's body made a thunderous sound. The light outside his body was instantly restrained, and the vital fire also entered the top of his head. In his 8 extraordinary meridians, his vital qi was like a torrential flood, flowing continuously, and finally flowing into the golden elixir. The golden elixir shone brightly, illuminating the entire Dantian. The golden elixir grew little by little. When the vital qi subsided, the golden elixir was actually one size bigger, and became the size of a ping-pong ball. Tang Zheng suddenly opened his eyes, and a dazzling golden light flashed. He couldn't help but exclaim, 5th-grade golden elixir, 4th-grade vital fire. He opened his palm, and a darker flame immediately burned in his palm. It didn't make a sound, but the power it contained was unquestionable. 4th-grade vital fire will definitely be more effective when refining pills, but I don't know which one is stronger, this 4th-grade vital fire or Xiao Bai's fire. The scene in front of him suddenly changed. Tang Zheng was familiar with it, and knew that it was time. As expected, in the blink of an eye, he left Langya Pavilion and returned to his room. He secretly checked his body and found that his vital qi was becoming more condensed, and more vital qi was flowing out of his golden elixir. It was flowing continuously. He couldn't help but smile, and said, although I relied on the sky-swallowing skill to absorb other people's power and increase my cultivation by 2 levels, this time I broke through with my own efforts. This is enough to show that I've consolidated my previous gains and offset the side effects of the sky-swallowing skill." He walked out of the room, and the Empyrean fairy's eyes immediately locked onto him. At once, her eyes almost popped out, and she exclaimed, "You! How did your cultivation increase again?" Previously, when she entered the room to see Tang Zheng, his cultivation didn't change much. How long had it been? In just a few hours, he had advanced by leaps and bounds. Wasn't this cultivation speed a bit too fast? Tang Zheng nodded slightly at the Empyrean fairy, and said, "Is it very surprising to raise your cultivation?" The Empyrean maiden was so angry that she rolled her eyes at his calm tone and attitude. If this was not surprising, then what was? "Young Master Tang, are you in there?" Suddenly, a person rushed in from outside like a raging inferno. Tang Zheng looked at the person who came and asked curiously, "Young Master Yan, why are you here?" The person who came was Yan Luyun. When he saw Tang Zheng, he pulled him back and said, "Quickly come back with me. The old man is looking for you. He said that there's something very important." Tang Zheng was confused. What was the matter with Yan Padian gathering so many people? However, since the other party was so anxious, it must be a big matter. Thus, he did not delay and said, "Then let's go. Fu Yao, tell the others that I'm going out for a while." The Empyrean fairy looked at his departing figure with a complicated expression. She couldn't help but feel jealous in the depths of her eyes. She was also a cultivation genius that many people envied. In fact, her background was extremely secretive and her background was extremely great. Therefore, she rarely envied others, let alone being jealous. However, during this period of time, she had been struck by Tang Zheng time and time again. Her self-confidence had almost been destroyed, and she was even a little jealous of him. Chapter 8:18. When Yan Padian saw Tang Zheng, he quickly walked over to welcome him. "Tang Zheng, please come in, you're finally here." Tang Zheng looked at him strangely. Why would he, who was always calm and collected, lose his composure like this? He asked, "What happened?" "I just received news that someone wants to take revenge on you." "Revenge?" Tang Zheng frowned. "Who wants to take revenge on me?" "The news of you killing the Sword God's disciple, Jian Shisan, has already spread. The Sword God has already entered the capital and wants to take revenge on you." Yan Padian said worriedly. "The Sword God has entered the capital?" Tang Zheng was truly shocked. Back then, he had met the Sword God in the snowy mountains in the northeast, and he still remembered it clearly. If not for the help of the 4 symbols Venerable and the Sword Spirit, he probably wouldn't have been able to walk out of that sky cavern. "Yes, the Sword God is here for you. I just received this news, so I quickly called you over to discuss countermeasures," Yan Padian said anxiously. Tang Zheng frowned, and said, "Soldiers come to block, water comes to cover the earth. Since the Sword God is here, then dodging is definitely not possible." In the capital, Tang Zheng was not afraid of the Sword God. After all, other than his own strength, there was also the Empyrean fairy, a powerful external aid. If the Sword God wanted to kill him, it would not be an easy task. Seeing that Tang Zheng was not in a hurry at all, Yan Padian said anxiously, "I am even more anxious than you. Why are you still so calm and collected, as if this matter has nothing to do with you?" Although Yan Padian was also a Grandmaster stage expert, he knew that compared to the Sword God, he had no chance of winning. Adding to the thunderous reputation of the Sword God, he would naturally be shocked in his heart. Tang Zheng smiled faintly. "The Sword God is also a human. I have already fought with him. He is not invincible, so there is no need to worry too much." Yan Padian didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and said, "This is truly the case of the emperor not being anxious, the eunuch is anxious." Tang Zheng was moved and said, "Thank you, Yan family head, for your concern. This news is also very important to me. Otherwise, if I didn't make any preparations before encountering the sword deity, I'm afraid I would be in great danger." Yan Potion's heart relaxed. Tang Zheng's gratitude had not caused his work to be in vain. Although, after Yan Qingyi returned from the northwest, she had once told him about the new prophecy that she had seen, and that the Messiah seemed to be a misunderstanding. However, Yan Padian still thought highly of Tang Zheng and did his best to help him. The two of them had truly become allies in a trench. Then how are you going to prepare? Yan Padian asked curiously. This matter was of great importance, he had no choice but to ask. The corners of Tang Zheng's mouth curled up into a mysterious smile as he said, the Song family has mobilized so many people and even invited the sword deity. They will definitely make a big fuss and let everyone watch a good show to see the strength of the Song family. Furthermore, I'm afraid that he has already investigated my background in the capital, so I think that they will take the initiative to attack. You said that they might attack your residence? Yan Padian asked with furrowed brows. Tang Zheng nodded his head, it's not that it should be, but that it's a certainty. This time, the Song family will definitely take over the sword god's hand and get rid of me. Of course, they will go and kill me, and it will be even more intimidating, causing all the powers in the capital to fear the Song family in the future. Yan Padian pondered for a while, then nodded his head, your analysis makes sense. But there are so many women in your family. If they get hurt, that won't be good. In Yan Potion's eyes, Tang Zheng's romantic affairs were not worth mentioning at all. Which successful man did not have these things? The aristocratic families were already used to it. On the contrary, this was a manifestation of strength. Only the most powerful man would attract the favor of so many women. Tang Zheng recalled the few people in his family, and the corner of his mouth revealed a sweet smile. He shook his head and said, there's no need to worry about them. This time, I just happened to borrow the sword god to let them truly see the true face of this world. There were a few women in the family who had lived a good life since they were young and had never experienced any great storms. Tang Zheng had always tried his best to protect them, but in this world, and because of their identities, they would eventually face all kinds of dangers. It was better to let them adapt in advance, so that when they encountered danger in the future, they would not be flustered and would not know how to deal with it. Although this was somewhat cruel, it was still much better than being at a loss when facing danger in the future and causing irreparable and serious consequences. Seeing that Tang Zheng had already made up his mind, Yan Padian nodded his head in relief and said, our Yan family will help you fight against the enemies. Tang Zheng did not reject his good intentions and expressed his gratitude. The next day, Tang Zheng woke up and prepared breakfast for everyone. When everyone was gathered at the table, Tang Zheng said, I have something to announce. I hope that everyone will stay at home today because someone will come. Someone? Who's coming? Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously, you will know when the time comes, but be mentally prepared, I am afraid this day will not be that easy. When the time comes, don't be afraid, I will take care of everything. Seeing Tang Zheng acting mysteriously, as if there was danger involved, everyone had different reactions. Empyrean Fairy was calm and collected, as if it had nothing to do with her. Wu Yu was eager to give it a try. His eyes lit up, as if he couldn't wait to fight immediately. Fang Shishir had experienced the matters of the Rockefeller family, so she could be considered to have some experience. She was looking forward to it, because this was Tang Zheng's life. She had long wanted to integrate into it and help him. Lu Qingmei had never experienced these things before, so she was at a loss. Mu Hongyan seemed to have thought of something and was a little worried. Back then, when she was with her late husband, she was very worried about this kind of moment, which often meant that there were many unpredictable risks. Although he always comforted her and said that it was fine, the worry in the depths of his eyes could not escape her eyes. But at this moment, Tang Zheng was indeed calm and collected, but she did not see any worry in the depths of his eyes, as if he was not worried at all. She could not help but compare Tang Zheng with her late husband. Although her late husband was a descendant of an aristocratic family, with a prominent status, and countless people envied him, but compared to Tang Zheng, it seemed that her late husband was overshadowed, and Tang Zheng was like the blazing sun in the sky, extremely dazzling. Everyone finished their breakfast with different thoughts, and then sat in the living room, or in the garden, chatting and drinking tea, quietly waiting for everything to come. Tang Zheng blended in with everyone, a little green in the midst of 100 flowers, but it was also a happy and harmonious atmosphere. Everyone had been together for such a long time that they were completely harmonious. The initial feeling of unfamiliarity had also been eliminated. Therefore, one could only hear the occasional laughter and beautiful faces. This was definitely a picture that made one's heart beat faster. Although there was no information that indicated that the enemy would come today, Tang Zheng believed that the enemy would definitely not wait any longer. They would be impatient to show their strength in an attempt to regain their lost face. Close to noon, a group of people appeared outside the villa as expected. Although this villa was not very far from Yenqing University, it was very quiet, and it was extremely difficult for ordinary people to come here, so when so many people suddenly appeared here, it did not attract any attention. The composition of this group was very complicated. There were old people in their old age, middle-aged people in the prime of their lives, and there were also youths full of vigor. The three generations of old, middle-aged, and young were very harmonious. Moreover, most of the people in this group were very good-looking. Those middle-aged men in the prime of their lives were casually pulled out, and they were also called uncles by infatuated girls. Not only were they handsome, but they also had an extraordinary temperament and style. As for the young man, it was even more so. His handsome face and beautiful face definitely covered many of the popular little fresh meat and female stars. Tang Zheng stood at the door, facing the sun, and smiled at this group of people. He smacked his lips and said, "Hee hee, everyone is really here." The Song, Yi, and Chu families were all here. Among them, the Song family was Song Jinan, Song Hanjun, Song Yu, and other people in the Song family that he did not know. The Ya family's lineup could not be underestimated. Yi Xuanji, Yi Tianming, Yi Ku, and even Yi Meiyu were among them. Yi Meiyu had already established a marriage contract with Song Yu, so it was not strange for her to be present. The Chu family had already declined, and it was obvious that there were fewer experts, only Chu Mingxian and Chu Xiaofeng. The Chu family had long been following the lead of the Song family, so of course they would not be absent from such an important place. Of course, the most eye-catching person was the sword god who was standing in front of the group. He stood proudly like a divine sword that was inserted into the earth, causing people to respect him. The sword god's gaze was sharp, like a sharp sword, as he stared at Tang Zheng. Last time, he let Tang Zheng slip away and even took away the sword spirit. He had always felt regret, and it was even more of a humiliation. Who would have thought that before this matter was settled, Tang Zheng would actually kill his beloved disciple, Jian Shisan. Jian Shisan was the most talented of his three disciples, and he had always placed high hopes on him. To die so unexpectedly, and at the hands of an old opponent, the sword god's mood could be imagined. But when the sword god saw Tang Zheng again, he was shocked. Although Tang Zheng had deliberately restrained himself, the aura that he unintentionally emitted still could not escape his golden eyes. What exactly happened to this brat? How did his strength increase so quickly? The sword god had seen countless geniuses in his life, but none of them could be compared to Tang Zheng, even he himself could not. His talent was envied by the world, especially his achievements in the way of the sword. Ordinary people would find it difficult to catch up to him, but he knew that compared to Tang Zheng, he was still slightly inferior. The others saw the two of them looking at each other from afar. If they knew what the sword god was thinking, they would be so shocked that their jaws would drop to the ground. Tang Zheng lifted his foot, and with just a small step, he actually arrived at the entrance of the courtyard. The power of the shrinking ground into an inch technique could be seen at a glance. Many experts only took a glance, and their expressions changed slightly. The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth hooked up into a faint smile, and said, with such a large force, "It seems like you won't stop until you kill me. Tang Zheng, you should have died a long time ago. Back then, when you first arrived in the capital, I should have killed you. There wouldn't have been so many things to do after that." Chu Xiaofeng jumped out and complained fiercely. Tang Zheng glanced at him indifferently, and said, "Since when is it your turn to speak here? The Chu family has indeed declined, and there are no rules at all. Chu Xiaofeng's face immediately flushed red, and he panted like an ox, unable to speak. Tang Jing did not put him in his eyes at all, and turned to the sword god, and asked, "You are here to denounce me for the death of Jian Shisan, then do you know the true cause of Jian Shisan's death?" The moment these words were spoken, the expressions of the Song family members changed, because there was a detail that could not be revealed to outsiders. Chapter 8:19. Song Yu impatiently took a step forward and said, "Tang Jing, even at death's door you still want to talk nonsense. Master, you must not listen to his nonsense." Sword God's face was gloomy as he declined to comment. Tang Jing laughed in ridicule. "Song Yu, why are you so nervous? Could it be that you have a guilty conscience and are afraid that I will see through your disguise?" Song Yu's face flushed red as she said with a guilty conscience, "I'm just spouting nonsense." "How could I have a guilty conscience?" "Is that so? Since you don't have a guilty conscience, then why are you so afraid that I will tell you the truth?" Tang Jing asked with a smile. This smile caused Song Yu's heart to turn cold as she stammered, "Who has the time to listen to your nonsense?" Sword God suspiciously looked at Song Yu and then looked at Tang Jing and said, "There's no harm in listening. I want to see what ugly things you can say." If Song Yu did not obstruct him like this, then perhaps Sword God would not have too much interest. But looking at Song Yu's appearance, he was instead a little interested in listening to Tang Jing's words. Song Yu was suddenly startled as she did not know what to do. Tang Jing glanced at Song Yu in ridicule and said, "Jian Shisan is indeed worthy of being Sword God's disciple. His sword arts are exceptional and his cultivation is also very profound. It's a pity that he was used as a spear by others. That day when I killed my way into the Song family, the main members of the Song family fled in a sorry state and became cowards. Only Jian Shisan alone with his sword stood out bravely. After a fierce battle with me, he was no match for me and was captured alive. I did not kill him, but he committed suicide. At that time, Jian Shisan resolutely chose to commit suicide in order to protect the information about the Azure Dragon Hall in his brain. This kind of resolute attitude was truly worthy of respect. An ordinary person definitely wouldn't have such boldness and courage." After Tang Jing finished speaking, the faces of the Song family members suddenly changed. The sword god's face became more and more gloomy, and he looked at the Song family rather unkindly. This was very different from the news that the Song family had told them. In the end, who was right and who was wrong? For a moment, it was hard for him to distinguish. But there was no doubt that there was something fishy going on. Song Jianan finally couldn't hold it in anymore. He stepped forward and reprimanded, "Tang Jing, do you think you can fool the sword god with your lies? You underestimate the sword god too much. Everyone knows that your words are all lies. Whether it's a lie or not, wouldn't it be clear if we asked the others who were present at the time? Of course, I know that the closest members of the Song family are definitely in cahoots with you and won't tell the truth. However, there are so many other servants, and there will definitely be some who are upright among them. Naturally, they will tell the truth." Song Jianan said in his heart that it was really a close call. Fortunately, he was wise and heroic at that time and made a prompt decision to get rid of those servants. The dead tell no tales. In this way, Tang Jing's words had no evidence, and naturally did not have much credibility. Song Jianan pretended to be filled with righteous indignation, and angrily complained, "Tang Jing, you still have the face to ask those servants to testify for you. Could it be that you've forgotten what you did at that time? Not only did you kill Jian Shisan, you even started a massacre and killed all the servants of our Song family. The dead tell no tales, so you're trying in vain to use this kind of lowly lie to sow discord? Tang Jing, could it be that you're treating all of us as fools and allowing you to deceive us?" Song Jianan's false accusation made Tang Jing realize that this old ginger was indeed spicy enough. This ability to reverse black and white had reached perfection. Moreover, a strong chill rose in Tang Jing's heart. Song Jianan actually said that those servants were all dead. What this meant, Tang Jing was all too clear. These people were definitely dead, and they did not die by his hands, but by Song Jianan's hands. In order to protect the secret of that day, he did not hesitate to sacrifice so many people. This kind of ruthlessness and determination was inconceivable and made people shudder. The dead tell no tales, and Tang Zheng could not produce any strong evidence at all. Instead, he was falsely accused, causing him to have no way to clearly explain what happened that day. He said indignantly, "Song Jianan, you're ruthless. You actually killed all of your own servants. Then I have nothing to say, but justice is in the hearts of the people." A complacent look flashed across Song Yu's eyes, and she urged, "Master, let's do it. Take revenge for eldest senior brother, and pay with blood." Seeing that Tang Zheng was unable to produce any strong evidence, although the sword god revealed a puzzled expression, he did not make things difficult for the Song family. Instead, he stared at Tang Zheng and said with killing intent, "Disciples' words are reasonable. Let's not talk too much, let's kill him first." In the end, he still chose to believe in the Song family. He walked straight towards Tang Zheng. The sword god was short and even had a disability. He walked with a limp, 1 foot high and 1 foot low, but wherever he passed, deep footprints would be left on the ground. When he reached the entrance of the courtyard, the sword chi was already like a rainbow. His short and even ugly body suddenly changed greatly, as if he had become an omnipotent giant. Tang Zheng's pupils constricted, his entire body tensed up, and he was ready to attack. "Stop!" Suddenly, a thunderous roar rolled over, and a group of people rushed over from afar. Yan Padian stood at the front of the group with an extraordinary bearing. Yan Qishan and Yan Luyun were among them, and another familiar person also attracted Tang Zheng's gaze, Qin Badian. Back then, Qin Badian had protected Tang Zheng without hesitation, and Tang Zheng had always remembered this friendship. Now that the two of them had not seen each other for several months, seeing Qin Badian now, Tang Zheng had mixed feelings. Both sides volunteered to help Tang Zheng. Their eyes and ears were all over the capital, and when they heard that the Song family had mobilized a large force and surrounded Tang Zheng's residence, both sides rushed over without stopping. Qin Badian did not know the sword god, but he could tell that this unassuming old man's strength was unfathomable. Although Yan Padian had never seen the sword god before, he recognized him with a single glance and was overwhelmed with shock. This was because Yan Padian thought that compared to the sword god, one was in the sky and one was on the ground. Although they had not fought, all of this was already destined by the heavens. Yan Padian did not have any intention of retreating. Instead, his fighting spirit was ignited, and he wished that he could immediately compete with the sword god. Everyone subconsciously looked at this group of people. As soon as he finished speaking, Yan Qishan had already stood in front of Tang Zheng to protect him, glaring at the sword god like a tiger eyeing its prey. The sword god raised his eyebrows and looked at Yan Padian in ridicule. The two of them were old men, but their appearances and temperaments were completely different. The sword god had the eyes of a mouse, and if a stranger were to see him, even a baby would be scared to tears. As for Yan Padian, although he trained hard, most of the time, he was pampered and held a high position. Furthermore, he had a handsome appearance and was definitely a model among the old men. But facing the sword god's mocking gaze, Yan Padian did not dare to be arrogant, but he did not retreat either, and said, "Your Excellency sword god, if you want to kill Tang Zheng, then you have to pass through my hurdle first. I also want to experience your Excellency sword god's skills." Yan Potion's words were loud and clear, and entered everyone's ears clearly, causing many people to be moved. How much courage did it take to directly challenge the sword god? The people from the other three great clans looked at Yan Padian as if he was a madman, and discussed animatedly. Yan Padian must be crazy. He actually dares to provoke the sword god. Does he not know how to write the word death? That's right, how could he be a match for the sword god? For Tang Zheng, he was actually willing to sacrifice his life. Is the relationship between Tang Zheng and the Yan family that close? So what if they're close? They don't know what's good for them. Isn't it just nice that they were taken care of by the sword god this time? One after another, they did not think highly of Yen Padian at all, but Yen Padian turned a deaf ear to them. Like a shield, he stood in front of Tang Zheng to protect him. Tang Zheng was moved. The Yen family had treated him well. This favor was too great. How could he let him take the risk? He advised in a low voice, "Elder Yen, the sword god is here for me, I will deal with him." However, Yen Padian stubbornly shook his head, and said resolutely, "I have long wanted to experience the sword god's skills, you don't have to worry about me." Seeing that his attitude was firm, Tang Zheng swallowed his words of persuasion. He only made up his mind, if Yen Potion's strength was insufficient, then he would definitely help him. "Then be careful, Elder Yen." Yen Padian nodded, and looked at the sword god warily. The sword god looked at Yen Padian with disdain, and said, "Since you are courting death, then I will satisfy you." Shwa! The sword light of the nameless sword lit up in an instant. The sword was originally nameless, but because of the sword god, the illustrious name of the nameless sword spread out, causing people to feel fear. Yen Potion's pupils constricted. He took a deep breath and activated the dragon elephant kung fu. This was the consummate skill that he had cultivated his entire life, and when he fought with Tian Chanzi back then, he had also used the dragon elephant kung fu, but he had lost. Now that he was using the dragon elephant kung fu against his enemy, he did not know whether he would win or lose. The aura around Yen Potion's body suddenly changed, as though he had turned into a dragon. Of course, this was far from a true dragon. Tang Zheng's heart moved. If Yen Padian had a little bit of dragon qi in his body, then it would definitely be of great benefit to the dragon elephant kung fu, and its power would increase greatly. This was like the finishing touch of a painting, making the dragon elephant kung fu live up to its name. Tang Zheng's finger was as fast as lightning as it pointed at the spine of Yen Potion's back. Yen Potion's entire body trembled. Before he could understand what had happened, he felt a boundless energy pouring in from his back. He was overwhelmed with shock. This kind of energy was something he had never heard of before, but without a doubt, this energy was extremely mystical, and was perfectly comparable to his dragon elephant kung fu. Ka ka ka. All the bones in Yen Potion's body crackled. His inner strength surged like a river, quickly increasing, and in the blink of an eye, his cultivation actually went up another level, reaching the shocking 6th level of the Grandmaster realm. Yen Potion's cultivation had always suppressed the people from the other families, but it was still extremely difficult for him to make a breakthrough, especially when his cultivation was so high, unless it was a coincidence. However, just because of the energy that Tang Zheng had injected into him, his cultivation had increased by 1 level. This kind of almost impossible thing had happened to him, and it could be said to be a miracle. For a moment, he was actually unable to react as his eyes stared blankly. Immediately, he became even more curious as to what this energy was and why it was so powerful. If the dragon qi was injected into someone else's body, it would not have such an effect at all. This was a miracle that only happened when it complemented his dragon elephant kung fu. Before the start of the battle, his cultivation had increased, which was a good sign. Yen Potion's confidence increased greatly. He turned his head and nodded slightly at Tang Zheng. His gratitude could not be more obvious. The sword god also looked at Yen Padian in shock. This sudden breakthrough in cultivation during the battle was too miraculous. He couldn't help but look at Tang Zheng, guessing that it must be the effect of that finger just now. Chapter 820. The change in Yen Padian was obvious in the eyes of many discerning people. They looked at each other in dismay, revealing expressions of shock. When they saw him attacking the sword god without hesitation, everyone's hearts were in their throats. Roar! Yen Padian let out a long roar, like a dragon's roar, his aura surging like a rainbow. The mocking expression on the sword god's face faded quite a bit as the nameless sword pierced down from the sky. Under the sunlight, the crack on the nameless sword was especially dazzling. Every time the sword god saw this crack, he would uncontrollably recall the scene in the sky cavern. Tang Zheng had fused with the sword's soul, and with a single move, he had actually caused a crack to appear on the nameless sword. The damage to the nameless sword that had accompanied him for decades was an eternal pain in his heart. The sword god loved the sword like a fool, and was often jokingly called a fool. With his sword damaged, his mood could be imagined, and the depth of his resentment towards Tang Jing could also be imagined. This was something that had never happened before, causing his mind to tremble at that time. He pulled his disciple Qi Sha and retreated. What he did not know was that the sword was not done by Tang Jing, but was controlled by Qi Yu's heart, causing it to be overused. At this moment, he saw that Tang Jing had helped Yan Padian raise his cultivation with a light finger, so he became even more determined to get rid of Tang Jing. Tang Jing, you killed my disciple, the sword 13, then you must have seen his 13 swords. Today, I will use the 13 swords to defeat this person, and let you know the power of my sword pavilion sword techniques, and pay tribute to my disciple's soul. As soon as he finished speaking, the nameless sword turned into 2, 2 into 4. In the end, it became 13 swords. This was not a real sword, but 13 sword qis that slashed towards Yan Padian in one go. The 13 swords only had a total of 13 moves, and they cycled endlessly. The sword god was a level higher than the sword 13, so when the 13 moves were used together, they became 13 sword qis. Puff puff puff. The air was split into several parts by the 13 swords, shooting in all directions. The space in front of Yan Padian became a vacuum. Boom! Yan Potion's fist struck the vacuum, rumbling like thunder. Sword chi and fist shadows surged, and a faint golden light flickered within the fist shadows. Yan Potion's heart trembled as he stared at the golden light that occasionally flashed in disbelief. This was a phenomenon that had never appeared before. This golden light was both familiar and unfamiliar. But without a doubt, because of this flickering golden light, its power had increased greatly. This must be the energy that Tang Jing injected into my body, but what exactly is it, to actually raise my dragon form method by so much? Yan Padian muttered in his heart. Fist shadows and sword chi intertwined, filling the sky with chi energy. Many of the spectators were still weak, so they were forced to gasp for breath. Their faces were pale as they retreated. However, many experts stared at the two of them as if they had understood something. A life and death battle between experts of this level was rare. It could give people a lot of insights. This was something that couldn't be bought with money. Naturally, they wouldn't miss this good opportunity. Inside the house, a group of women held their breaths as they watched the battle. Without a doubt, the shock that this brought to some of them could be imagined. Other than Marshall and Empyrean Fairy, who were calm and collected, the expressions of the others were very interesting. They finally understood what Tang Jing meant by his words earlier. Someone had come, but not as a guest, but as an enemy of life and death. They gradually experienced the stormy seas that Tang Jing had experienced in his life, and all sorts of feelings welled up in their hearts. Empyrean Fairy had long seen through Tang Jing's intentions, so she said as if nothing had happened, "Look carefully, the storms and waves he will experience in the future will only be greater and more terrifying than this. Therefore, staying by his side, she would never feel monotonous. His life was an adventure filled with endless excitement. You have to adjust your mentality, otherwise you will be frightened again and again." Presumably, Tang Jing doesn't want to see this. These were all smart people. They finally guessed the reason why Tang Jing had left them to watch the battle. This was a preventive measure, and also a symbolic signal. If they could adapt to this kind of scene in life, then Tang Jing would bring them along to see the scenery of life. Mu Hongyan's cheeks were slightly red. The other women all had an unclear relationship with Tang Jing. If they were to say that he would bring them along to see the scenery of life, there would naturally be no problem. But he had left her behind. Could it be, there was some kind of thought-provoking deep meaning behind this? Thinking to this point, Mu Hongyan's little heart began to beat violently. She then took a deep breath and suppressed the chaotic thoughts in her heart. She secretly blamed herself. What was wrong with her? She was like a little girl who had never experienced anything. Master, can Nana also become this powerful in the future? Nana was not afraid at all. She was enjoying the battle with great interest, as if she was watching a movie. When the Empyrean Fairy heard this, she revealed a gentle smile and firmly said, "You won't become as powerful as them. Instead, you will definitely be more powerful than them, and more than just a little." "Wow, that's great. Nana will become powerful and then protect Big Brother." The little girl waved her small pink fist and cheered happily. Seeing that the two of them were unable to determine the winner for a while, Tang Zheng's gaze swept through the crowd and locked onto an enemy that made him particularly jealous, Song Yu. Song Yu had gone against him time and time again. At the martial arts assembly, she had used the spirit transformation pill to harm him in an attempt to let him die at the hands of the werewolves. Later on, she had targeted him time and time again, and even had designs on Yi Dingdang. Therefore, Tang Zheng had long since had the intention to kill her. In the past, Song Yu was like a turtle hiding in its shell. Now that he had the support of the sword god, he walked out fearlessly. Tang Zheng laughed coldly, his figure flashed, and the War Soul sword looked down from above, cleanly slashing down at Song Yu. "Protect me." Song Yu's first reaction was not to counterattack, but to seek the protection of others. She even had to flee in panic and hide behind the crowd. Song Yu had long since lost the thought of competing with Tang Zheng, so she obediently ran away, which was the best way to save her life. "Arrogant brat, stop." Song Jianan had been staring at the battle the entire time, but he suddenly reacted. With a wave of his arm, he attacked Tang Zheng. The thousand needles broken bone hand was ever-changing, and had once caused Tang Zheng to suffer a lot. This time, Tang Zheng had long been on guard against him, so with a flash of sword light, the War Soul sword slashed towards that hand. Song Jianan was originally at the 4th level of the Grand Master stage, but after Tang Zheng used the sky-swallowing technique to absorb 2 levels of his cultivation, he was reduced to the 2nd level of the Grand Master stage. At the same time, Tang Zheng's strength had greatly increased, and he had already reached the 5th level of the Gold Core stage. Their fighting strength could be imagined, and there was no need to compare. Even a blind person could see that Tang Zheng was much more powerful. When the sword light fell, Song Jianan's arm could no longer move forward. Otherwise, he would definitely end up with a broken arm. Forced to retreat, he was forced to retreat. As soon as they exchanged blows, the two sides were able to determine the winner, which was unexpected. Especially the people from the Yi and Chu families, their expressions were especially interesting. They knew very little about the changes in Tang Zheng during this period of time, so they were at a loss for what to do. Tang Zheng's aura was like a rainbow as he pounced on his opponent. Song Jianan fought and retreated, in a sorry state. His face and ears were red, like a monkey's butt. Seeing that Tang Zheng was chasing after him again, he did not care about the dignity of the head of the family. He actually grabbed a few of his subordinates around him and threw them at Tang Zheng, trying to stop him from chasing after him. Tang Zheng easily dodged, and the War Soul sword stabbed straight at Song Jianan's back. "Save me." Song Jianan was really disgraced. He had no choice but to directly call for help. He and Song Yu were like family, with a kind of demeanor. When the Yi and Chu families saw this, they looked at each other. As an ally, they were ashamed. But if Song Jianan died, it would be even more tragic for them. After all, they were here to help the Song clan. Moreover, if Song Jinan died, then wouldn't Tang Zheng turn around to deal with them? Wouldn't that be terrible? Of course, they had firm confidence that the sword god would win. At that time, there would be no chance for Tang Zheng to jump around. The sword god was Song Yu's master. If they did not help the Song family now, then they would not be able to bear the consequences. Therefore, no matter what, they could not stay out of this. "Tang Zheng, stop!" Yi Xuanji roared, and took the lead to charge towards Tang Zheng, trying to stop him. Chu Mingxian was not willing to fall behind, and attacked as well. Yi Xuanji had been cultivating wholeheartedly for the past half a year, and his cultivation had increased from the 1st level of the Grandmaster stage to the 2nd level of the Grandmaster stage. If it wasn't for Tang Zheng, he wouldn't even be able to cross the threshold of the Grandmaster stage, but he didn't know how to be grateful at all. After the death of the previous patriarch, Chu Chongyang, Chu Mingxian also worked hard, and actually managed to reach the first level of the Great Master Stage. The three Great Master Stage experts surrounded and attacked Tang Zheng. Song Jia Nan was lucky enough to escape and heaved a sigh of relief. He was shocked in his heart. The growth of this brat's power was getting more and more abnormal. He was obviously stronger than last time. Yi Xuanji and Chu Mingxian worked together to attack. Yi Xuanji used a sword and Chu Mingxian used a blade, and it was the sunset blade technique that was passed down in their family. Tang Zheng had already experienced the sunset blade technique from Chu Chongyang, and was well aware of its power. Facing several master-level experts, Tang Zheng did not dare to be careless as he thrust out his sword. Shwa shwa shwa, the heaven-flying immortal sword technique was nimble and elegant, just like an immortal. His sword attack was like a flying immortal, causing the two to be unable to defend against it. Although the heavenly fairy swordsmanship was not the best swordsmanship in the eyes of the fairy of the ninth heaven, it was the most exquisite swordsmanship in the eyes of Yi and Chu. When the sword came, it gave people the illusion that it was unstoppable. Roar. Kill. However, the two of them were resolute people after all. With a loud roar, they dispelled the strange thoughts in their hearts. The large blade slashed down, like a setting sun descending from the sky. The large blade glowed with sunlight, and its aura was terrifying. Ever since Yi Xuanji saw Yi Dingdang's wind-chasing sword technique, he seemed to have comprehended something. His attainments in sword arts had increased by another level, which was why he was able to break through to the second level of the Great Master Stage. Ding, ding dang. Clang. The swords and blades clashed, creating a series of intense sparks. The people who were standing close to them were injured by the sword chi and retreated in panic. However, there were two people who did not retreat. Yan Qishan and Qin Badian looked at each other and rushed forward without hesitation. Bullying us with numbers, do you really think we don't have anyone left? Chapter 8:21. Yan Qishan and Qin Baishan's participation in the battle caused the situation to become chaotic. The Song, Yi, and Chu families no longer watched quietly. Instead, they roared and rushed towards the people brought by the Yan family and Qin Badian. These people were very clear that they were not the opponents of these masters, but they did not mind getting rid of others. In an instant, the front of the villa became a killing field. Swords and knives faced each other, cold light flashed everywhere, murderous aura soared, blood flew, and both sides suffered casualties. The difference in strength was immediately revealed. But the three families obviously had more people, so the Yan family was forced to retreat. Yan Luyun was as light as a swallow. He shuttled through the crowd, knocking down one enemy after another, protecting his own side. Chu Xiaofeng mixed in the crowd and suddenly rushed out, preparing to sneak attack Yan Luyun. But Yan Luyun's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick. He successfully counterattacked, hitting his chest and falling to the ground. Among the four masters of the capital, Yan Luyun was first, followed by Song Yu, Yi Ku, and Chu Xiaofeng. After Chu Xiaofeng suffered a big loss in the hands of Tang Zheng, his reputation declined. Coupled with the fall of the Chu family, the title of the four masters of the capital was in jeopardy. Chu Xiaofeng wanted to revive his prestige, so he prepared to sneak attack Yan Luyun. But he did not think that his strength was not enough. He was easily counterattacked by Yan Luyun, causing serious injuries. When Yiku saw this, she couldn't stay out of the matter. She came to Yan Luyun's front in an open and above-board manner. She cupped her fist and said gracefully, "Yan Xiao, I ask for your advice." Yan Luyun's expression became cold and serious. Yiku was not comparable to Chu Xiaofeng. Among the four masters of the capital, Yiku was very low-key, but her strength could not be underestimated. "Please." Yan Luyun cupped his fist and attacked. The two people's movements were very fast, as if they were dancing. They shuttled back and forth in the crowd to dodge. They were fighting very happily. Yi Tianming was not idle. Although he had not reached the level of a master, he was also a Xiantian master. His strength was profound, and he had already hit many people. Suddenly, in this chaotic battle, the Yen family was at a disadvantage. So. Suddenly, 3 figures came from a distance, especially one sword that was as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, it was in front of Yi Tianming, blocking his attack. Yi Tianming's pupils shrank as he exclaimed, "Ding dang." Because of the coincidence, Yi not only practiced the Jade Heart Sutra, but also the wind swordsmanship skill. And with her close relationship with Tang Zheng, her cultivation, hers, and her close relationship, wind swordsmanship's, wind swordsmanship, and wind sword. And because of a coincidence, because, and hers, she, wind swordsmanship, and her, and s. Yi Tianlei and Feng Xinyang originally did not notice this point, but this time when they heard the news and rushed over, they finally noticed this point. They were both surprised and had mixed feelings. As parents, being surpassed by their daughter was naturally something to be happy about, but they also felt a little jealous. Yi Dingdang was very clear that her parents were slightly inferior to Yi Tianming. Moreover, Yi Tianlei remembered their brotherhood. Of course, he could not go all out, or he would be at a disadvantage. Yi Dingdang could not stand by and watch her parents put themselves in danger, so she bravely took on this burden. She did not have much feelings for Yi Tianming. After all, she had not even spoken to him a few times. The breeze sword in Yi Dingdang's hands showed its power. It complemented the wind swordsmanship. This was the first time she used the breeze sword to fight, so she could not use it freely at first. But even so, Yi Tianming's expression was very interesting. He had not paid much attention to Yi Dingdang. After all, she was just a junior who suddenly appeared, so he naturally ignored her. But at this moment, when he saw her swordsmanship, all the contempt in his heart disappeared. He was full of shock and looked at her in disbelief. "Yi Dingdang, how did you become so powerful?" Yi Dingdang snorted coldly and did not say a word. She stabbed her sword as fast as lightning. The wind swordsmanship was about speed and accuracy. She had already memorized the essence of the swordsmanship. Naturally, it was very powerful. After more than 10 moves, Yi Tianming knew that he was not Yi Dingdang's opponent. He had practiced martial arts for decades, but he was actually suppressed by a junior. This was a great humiliation. He roared angrily and resisted. But Yi Dingdang was still firmly suppressing him, so he could not do anything. There were already many wounds on his body, and he was in a sorry state. Yi Meiyu hid behind the crowd and looked at Yi Meiyu from afar. She was in a daze and muttered to herself, "How did this bitch become so powerful?" Yi Meiyu had been secretly competing with Yi Dingdang. Ever since Yi Dingdang's family of 3 broke away from the Ya family, she had been complacent for a long time. In addition, she had set up a marriage contract with Song Yu, which gave her the illusion that she was the winner. She did not put Yi Dingdang in her eyes at all. But at this moment, seeing that her father, whom she had always respected, was no match for Yi Dingdang, all her confidence collapsed, and her heart turned to ashes. She asked her fiancé, Song Yu, in a panic, "What's going on?" Song Yu's eyes were vicious, as if they could spit out fire. He glared at Yi Dingdang fiercely. Originally, he could have had Yi Dingdang, but all of this was because of Tang Zheng's interference, causing his plan to fail. He had no choice but to compromise and get engaged to Yi Dingdang. He was extremely clear about Yi Meiyu's romantic affairs. Comparing Yi Meiyu and Yi Dingdang, one was a phoenix in the sky and the other was a crow on the ground. The difference between them was obvious. Hearing her question, Song Yu said snappily, "Aren't you a member of the Ya family?" "If you don't know, how would I know?" Yi Meiyu was furious after being scolded. She glared at Song Yu angrily. Song Yu's eyes turned cold, causing her to feel as if she had fallen into an ice cave. She kept quiet out of fear. "Let's go. This place is too dangerous." Yi Meiyu admitted defeat and said coquettishly. She had originally come to watch the show. With her little skills, she would only be sending herself to her death. Moreover, how could she, who had been pampered since she was young, really make a move? Now that there was no show to watch and there was even the danger of losing her life, of course she didn't want to stay any longer. Song Yu looked at her with disdain and shouted angrily, "Scram!" Then, Song Yu once again rushed into the battle. Song Yu still believed that his master could kill Tang Jing, so how could he give up halfway and run away? Not only would this cause him to lose face, it would also cause his master to look down on him, which was the most fatal thing. His sword technique still had a long way to go, and if he did not have his master to guide him, then his martial arts would almost reach the end. Yi Meiyu glared fiercely at Song Yu's back as it disappeared into the crowd, and muttered, "What are you being so fierce for? I won't play with you. If you die in the end, then so be it." Song Yu did not know that he had been cursed by his fiancée. Seeing that Yan Qishan and Qin Badian were entangled with Yi Xuanji and Chu Mingxian, Tang Jing finally had time to attack Song Jianan, who was in the crowd, while Song Hanjun and his father, Song Jianan, stood on the same side as Tang Jing, working together to resist Tang Jing. Even so, Tang Jing was not at a disadvantage at all. The war soul sword light flashed, forcing the two of them to stagger back. Song Yu's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. With a low roar, he quietly launched a sneak attack on Tang Jing. Tang Jing moved and immediately discovered Song Yu's figure. With a backhand slash, the war soul sword pierced through Song Yu's abdomen. With a shake of his arm, Song Yu flew into the crowd like a kite with a broken string. He fell into a pool of blood and was even ruthlessly stepped on by a few people. "You, Song Hanjun screamed in shock and rushed to Song Yu's side. He helped him up, only to see that his entire body was covered in blood, and he no longer had the bearing of an elegant young master. Although that sword strike was not fatal, it still caused Song Yu to suffer. His breath was weak as he said weakly, "Father, you must kill Tang Jing." Song Hanjun clenched his teeth and nodded fiercely, "Don't worry, with Senior Sword God here, none of the enemies today will be let off." As he spoke, he looked into the villa. Behind the window, the few beautiful faces were exceptionally clear. Tang Jing's luck with women is not shallow, to actually hide so many women in the Golden House. "Humph, he hurt my son, so I'll kill his woman and make him wish he was dead." Song Hanjun gritted his teeth. Whiz! Song Hanjun was like a gust of wind as he rushed towards the villa. Tang Jing glanced at Song Hanjun's movements from the corner of his eyes. He was well aware of his intentions, but he did not stop him, as if he did not see him at all. Song Hanjun rushed to the door, extremely excited. In his subconscious mind, these women looked beautiful, but they were all weak people, and killing them would be a piece of cake. As for whether or not he would feel guilty about killing a group of women and children, that was definitely not the case. He could even kill his own servants who had been with him for many years, so why wouldn't he be able to kill a few strange women? The door was kicked open by him. With a shake of his sword, he pierced in. The sword light was cold and dense. Bang! Suddenly, a palm silently struck his chest. His chest suddenly caved in, and a clear palm print was imprinted on his chest. He was like a kite with a broken string as he flew backwards. The sword in his hand involuntarily flew out of his hand. The sky and earth were spinning. He was absolutely sure that his blood was boiling. His face and ears were red, and blood was flowing out of his eyes. He landed heavily on the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood, dyeing the ground red. "Who hurt me? Aren't there only a few women inside? Why am I injured?" He was panting like an ox, and his face was getting redder and redder. However, he could not figure out what was going on. This was clearly an easy task, but he had messed it up. He raised his head with difficulty and looked towards the house. He saw a person standing at the door, a calm woman. He noticed his hand and immediately understood that he had been hit by her. Wu Yuan looked at Song Hanjun from afar. That attack just now was with all her strength, without any fanciful movements. The power of the Fire Nether Divine Palm was fully displayed. She did not take advantage of the situation to pursue him, because there was no need for that. That palm strike had already broken his heart meridian. He was dead for sure. Sure enough, Song Hanjuan's breathing became more and more hurried, and more blood flowed out of his eyes. He still stared at Wu, wanting to say a few ruthless words, but he was unable to say anything. He could only hear a whimpering sound coming from his throat. Suddenly, his entire body stiffened and he fell down, his life force severed. Chapter 822. Song Hanjuan's death. The majority of the people were shocked beyond words. Song Hanjuan's identity was not something ordinary warriors could compare to. He was the successor of the Song family, a candidate for the next patriarch, but he died just like that. It was too fast, catching everyone off guard and causing them to suck in a breath of cold air. Everyone could not help but look into the house and coincidentally saw Marshall standing at the door as well as many beauties behind the window. Upon seeing this, the Yen family's morale soared as they roared, "Kill!" Song Hanjuan's death had struck a blow to the three great families' morale, causing many to feel fear in their hearts. Even Yi Xuanji and the rest could not help but feel their eyelids twitch. Song Yu weakly laid on the ground as he watched his father die. He cried out in a heart-wrenching voice, "Father!" Song Jianan's eyes were red. He did not expect this to happen. He was originally confident in this battle, but his son was the first to die. "Tang Zheng, I will kill you!" Song Jianan roared as he attacked Tang Zheng with his 1,000 needles bone-breaking hand. However, he had already lost his footing and this attack was full of flaws. Tang Zheng squinted his eyes as he stood still. When Song Jianan's attack arrived in front of him, he raised his sword and pierced Song Jianan's shoulder, causing blood to flow. Song Jianan grimaced in pain as if he had just awoken from a dream. This was a battle of life and death. If he was not careful, he would lose his life. This was not the time to be impulsive. As a result, he hurriedly retreated. Before the War Soul sword could cause even more damage, he retreated far away and avoided the fatal blow. All he saw was a deep sword mark at the place where he was just standing, and stone fragments flew everywhere. The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth curled up. Song Hanjuan's death was his own doing. He did not expect that martial arts would be able to kill him in one strike. It could only be said that Song Hanjun was too arrogant, looking down on everyone, thinking that everyone in the room was a soft persimmon, and was not on guard at all. Since Song Jun was dead, the next one would be Song Jianan. He would definitely not let him escape. Otherwise, there would be no end to his troubles. Tang Zheng's attack suddenly became fiercer and fiercer, adding a few more wounds to Song Jianan's body. Just at this time, he suddenly heard a cry of alarm, only to see Yen Padian flying backwards, crashing into a big tree before stopping, and his chest was already dyed red with blood. Tang Zheng was shocked. In the battle between the Sword God and Yen Padian was ultimately unable to catch up and lost. Seeing the Sword God thrusting a few more times towards Yen Padian, Tang Zheng had no choice but to give up on Song Jianan. With a leap, he blocked in front of Yen Padian and activated his War Soul sword, blocking the few sword strikes with clanging sounds. Yen Potion's face was a little pale, and his expression was dejected as he said, "I'm really useless, I actually still lost to him. His sword techniques are truly exquisite and powerful." Tang Zheng asked with concern, "Senior Yen, how are you feeling?" Yen Padian said dejectedly, "I won't die yet, don't worry." Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief and said, "You rest first, I'll take care of the Sword God." Yen Padian did not know what Tang Zheng's cultivation level was, so he could only warn him, "Then be careful, the Sword God's sword technique is indeed worthy of its reputation, it is truly powerful." The Sword God stood 3 meters away, staring at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze, and said, "If you want to go up, then come." Tang Zheng raised his sword and attacked, only to see 13 sword chis arriving in the blink of an eye. He could only use his sword to block, but these 13 sword chis were endless, rising and falling one after another. These were the 13 moves of the 13 swords. They were the same 13 moves over and over again, but in the hands of the sword god, their power was enormous and mighty. Tang Zheng blocked the first few moves, but the ones behind came again, causing him to be flustered. Holy Armor Shield. With a thought from Tang Zheng, the Holy Armor Shield appeared out of thin air, blocking all the sword moves. The 13 swords instantly lost their threat. As long as he was unable to break through the Holy Armor Shield, then the 13 swords would be useless. The sword god was very clear on this point. Looking at the unassuming shield, he snorted coldly and said, "Cultivators are indeed cunning and have many tricks up their sleeves. But do you think you can stop me just like that?" The sword god jumped up high and descended from the sky, muttering to himself, flying down 3,000 feet, "I suspect that the Milky Way is descending from the 9 heavens." Just as he finished speaking the word heaven, he descended from the sky. The nameless sword erupted with a white light, and coincidentally, the Milky Way above the 9 heavens flew straight down, fiercely slashing down. Tang Zheng had never seen this sword technique before, but he could already deeply feel its power, and immediately raised the Holy Armor Shield. Boom! The Holy Armor Shield almost fell out of his hands. At the last moment, Tang Zheng clenched his teeth and held on, grabbing onto the Holy Armor Shield, but his body flew far away along with the Holy Armor Shield, and only stopped after smashing into a big tree. Puff! Spitting out a mouthful of blood, Tang Zheng struggled to get up. Without a doubt, this sword technique of the sword god was more powerful than the 13 swords from before. It was grand and majestic, as if it could communicate with the heaven and earth and draw the power of the heaven and earth for its own use. The sword god's face revealed a somewhat complacent expression as he gently stroked the nameless sword in his hand. The nameless sword was just an ordinary wooden sword, but in the hands of the sword god, it was a treasured sword comparable to a peerless divine weapon. The others were also frightened by this sword. Facing this sword, many people did not even dare to think of resisting, but Tang Zheng stubbornly resisted it. This already showed that Tang Zheng was very powerful. The people of the 3 great clans were all pleasantly surprised. The power of the sword god was indeed unparalleled. This time, Tang Zheng was dead for sure. Song Jianan's face was ashen, his hands clenched into fists, and he muttered, "Kill, kill, kill, you must kill Tang Zheng." Even the calm Empyrean fairy and Marshall had a strange expression on their faces. Marshall was shocked, she did not expect the sword god's sword technique to be so domineering. As for the Empyrean fairy, her eyelids twitched slightly, and then returned to normal. She muttered to herself, "This person's sword technique has indeed reached a higher level. He has glimpsed the profound meaning of sword techniques, and is only a step away from the Martial King realm." The Martial King realm was 1 level higher than the Grandmaster realm. Many warriors did not even dare to dream of it, and countless Grandmaster warriors stopped at the threshold of the Martial King realm. To cross this threshold, not only did it depend on oneself, one's diligence, and most importantly, one's luck. If one did not have a suitable opportunity, it would be difficult to cross this threshold in one's lifetime. However, in the eyes of the Empyrean fairy, the sword god had a chance to cross this threshold, not only because of his cultivation in sword techniques, but also because of his extremely firm heart towards sword techniques. He was a person who was addicted to the sword, and all his thoughts were on the sword, without any distractions. If this kind of person could not succeed, then others would not have a chance. Tang Zheng stared at the sword god in disbelief. He was sure that he had never seen this sword technique before, so he asked in a deep voice, "What sword technique is this?" "Ninth heaven falling galaxy." The sword god replied. Tang Zheng immediately thought of the poem he had just recited. Flying down 3,000 feet, like the Milky Way falling from the 9th heaven. Without a doubt, the 9 heavens Milky Way fall sword art was comprehended from this poem. This was a true master of sword arts, who could comprehend a sword art from a poem. "How does it taste?" the sword god asked. "Very good, I want to taste it again." Tang Zheng roared and rushed up again. This time, he changed from defense to offense. All of his sword techniques were sharp. Not only did he use the heaven-flying immortal sword technique, but he also used the wind-chasing sword technique. His sword techniques were complicated and his sword chi was unhindered, dazzling the eyes. The sword god had secretly looked at Yi Dingdong's wind-chasing sword technique and said in surprise, "So you and that little girl both know this sword technique, but it is obvious that the little girl's attainment in this sword technique is higher than yours." Yi Dingdong had been practicing the wind-chasing sword technique, and she also had the breeze sword, so the power she displayed was naturally greater than Tang Zheng's. The sword god had a pair of fiery eyes, so he could see who was better at a glance. The sword god also quickly used his sword. The ninth heaven falling galaxy sword technique was majestic and grand, and its power was peerless. It had the power to sweep through everything, making Tang Zheng rather passive. After a round of battle, Tang Zheng was actually retreating step by step. The sword god's sword was very fast. Before the first strike was finished, another strike was raised. Even his eyes were filled with swords, extremely sharp. Seeing that, the people from the three great families cheered. Some of them were already shouting excitedly, thinking that they were bound to win. Tang Zheng knew that things were not good. If he continued to be passive, the situation would be even worse. Seeing the sword god thrusting his sword at him again, Tang Zheng stretched out his hand, and actually brushed past the sword edge, trying to grab onto the sword god's hand. Obviously, the War Soul's sword could not do anything to the sword god, so he could only use the sky swallowing technique. However, the sword god was extremely sharp. With a shake of his arm, the nameless sword smashed into Tang Zheng's palm. A terrifying power was transmitted to his palm, as if it wanted to shatter his body and shatter his bones. Tang Zheng reacted on the spot and hurriedly used the swallowing heaven technique. Shua, a black hole appeared in his palm and instantly sucked in the terrifying power, resolving the crisis of his body being smashed into pieces. "Let's absorb your nameless sword first." Tang Zheng activated his power, and the suction force of the black hole increased greatly. The nameless sword trembled violently, as if it was about to fly into the black hole. The sword god's expression changed, and he exclaimed, "How evil, this technique is really hard to guard against. You want to steal my nameless sword? Dream on." The nameless sword hummed, and a sword light rushed into the sky, fiercely striking the black hole, but it disappeared without a trace. The sword god was stunned, shocked by the power of the black hole. He tapped the ground with the tip of his foot, and a huge crack spread from the tip of his foot to the distance. He had already retreated more than 10 meters with the nameless sword, escaping from the black hole. This series of attacks and counterattacks flowed like water, beautiful and unrestrained. It did not look like a simple sword technique, but an art. It was refreshing. However, under the beautiful appearance, there was often danger. This beautiful nine-heaven galaxy fall sword technique hid an indescribable danger. "What technique is this?" the sword god asked solemnly. "Sky swallowing technique." "Humph, what an arrogant name. Then let's see if your sky swallowing technique or my nameless sword is stronger." The sword god snorted and attacked fearlessly again. This time, his footsteps were extremely strange. He did not walk straight, but instead curved and curved, as if he was swimming. However, Tang Zheng immediately rejected this idea. This was not a snake, but the way he moved forward. Water was formless, and the nine heavens galaxy fall sword technique was to turn the sword into water. Water had no fixed momentum, so the sword technique naturally had no fixed momentum. Chapter 8:23. The sword had no fixed momentum, and the man had no fixed whereabouts. In an instant, the sword god successfully dodged the sky swallowing technique, and the nameless sword went straight for Tang Zheng's vitals. Tang Zheng raised his palms and tried to clamp the nameless sword. The sword chi rippled, and Tang Zheng's palms involuntarily parted. The nameless sword went straight for Tang Zheng's heart. Tang Zheng quickly retreated and raised his palms in front of his chest again. He finally managed to clamp the nameless sword. His chest heaved up and down as if his heart was about to jump out. The nameless sword was still a hair's breadth away from piercing his chest. The nameless sword was clamped between the palms, and the sky-swallowing technique suction force was trying to suck it into the black hole. Seeing this, the sword god was shocked and roared furiously, "You're courting death." The nameless sword shone brightly, and the silver light was like the Milky Way. Thousands of sword chi poured out in all directions. Puff, 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 the surrounding flowers, trees, buildings, and people were all affected by the sword chi. The flowers and trees were cut in half, and the buildings were riddled with holes. A few people immediately had deep bloody holes on their bodies, and they fell to the ground dead. Retreat! Someone yelled and hurriedly retreated until they were dozens of meters away. Then, they stopped and looked at the scene in shock. Everywhere the sword chi passed, it was a mess. There were many casualties. Even the ground was cracked by the sword chi, as if there was an earthquake. But what was surprising was that Tang Zheng's villa was so close, but it was not damaged in the slightest. When the invisible sword chi reached the villa, it instantly disappeared, as if it had never appeared. Many people were shocked and looked at the women standing behind the window in disbelief. Could there be an expert hiding in the villa? Otherwise, how could she so easily dissolve the sword god's sword chi? Perhaps even the few martial masters present would not be able to do this as easily as lifting a heavy weight. Without a doubt, the sword chi had been dissolved by the Empyrean fairy without leaving a trace. The Empyrean fairy looked surprised. She stared at the sword god and murmured, "This person's swordsmanship is exquisite and powerful. I'm afraid Tang Zheng is in danger." When the girls heard this, their expressions changed and they asked anxiously, "Then what should we do?" They looked at each other in dismay. One could well imagine the shock this incident gave them. They finally realized how terrifying an individual's martial strength could be. Fang Shishir gritted her teeth and said, "I'll go save him." "I'm going too." Lu Qingmei also said fearlessly. Mu Hongyan hugged Nana anxiously. She didn't have the strength to truss a chicken, so she couldn't help but feel very guilty. Wu did not say anything as he lifted his leg and walked out. "Stop right there." The Empyrean fairy finally spoke. "You'll only be courting death if you go. Even if I die, I want to die together with Tang Zheng." Fang Shishir stubbornly said. Lu Qingmei and Wu's identities were awkward, so they couldn't say it directly. However, the meaning between their eyebrows was more or less the same. The Empyrean fairy helplessly sighed and said, "With me here, he won't die." The girls all knew that the Empyrean fairy was powerful. Seeing her solemn vow, they couldn't help but be overjoyed. They nervously asked, "Really? The sword god is so powerful?" The Empyrean fairy calmly said, "The sword god is powerful, but in the end, he is still lacking." The Empyrean fairy's confidence made them all heave a sigh of relief. "Look, Tang Zheng is already in danger. I beg you to quickly take action." Lu Qingmei finally couldn't hold back and earnestly advised. "There is a limit to a person's strength. Only by breaking through the limit will there be great gains. Tang Zheng has not reached his limit. If I were to take action now, he would be able to survive. However, it would be a huge loss to waste the opportunity to fight a life and death battle with such an expert." The Empyrean fairy lightly said. Seeing that her words were reasonable, although they were worried, they didn't dare to persuade her anymore. They could only stare at the battlefield with their fists tightly clenched. The others also stared at the battlefield. Even the killing between them had weakened a lot. Yi Dingdang was worried about Tang Zheng. When she saw his urgent situation, she was extremely worried. Thus, she let out a low roar and the wind-chasing sword technique became even more fierce and strange, forcing Yi Tianming to stagger back. Finally, Yi Tianming revealed a flaw. The clear wind sword was peerlessly fast. In an instant, it was pressed against his chest. Blood flowed out. With one more stab, it would pierce through his heart. "Ding dang, don't!" Yi Tianlei roared and hurriedly stopped his daughter. Yi Tianming saw the opportunity and escaped from the clear wind sword, saving his life. Ding dang, don't kill him. Yi Tianlei grabbed his daughter's hand and anxiously shook his head. After all, he is your uncle. Although Yi Tianlei had left the Ye family again, he still had feelings for the Ye family. Yi Tianming was his elder brother. Other than respect, he also had deep feelings for him. Moreover, if Yi Dingdang really killed Yi Tianming, it would be considered an offense. Her reputation would not be good. She didn't want her daughter to bear such a bad reputation. Yi Dingdang looked at her father and complained, "They don't treat you as a member of the Ye family." Yi Tianlei smiled bitterly and said, "They are them and I am me. I don't have to ask them to do things according to my style. But you are my daughter. I don't want you to make a big mistake." Yi Dingdang was very smart. Although she was unwilling, she understood her father's painstaking efforts. She nodded helplessly and said, "Okay, I will listen to you." Yi Tianming's face was gloomy. It was like the sky in June with dark clouds. It was extremely ferocious. He clenched his teeth and his hands were trembling. He had actually lost to a junior, and even needed Yi Tianlei to plead for him to live. This was simply a great humiliation. In the past, he schemed to frame Yi Tianlei and caused him to be expelled from the family. He lost the qualification to compete for the position of the head of the family. Therefore, he had always looked down on Yi Tianlei and had a deep hostility towards Yi Tianlei. This time, Yi Tianlei's return made him even more flustered. The future position of the head of the family was almost taken away by Yi Tianlei. Therefore, his hatred towards Yi Tianlei deepened. What brotherly love! He had never treated Yi Tianlei as a brother. He only saw Yi Tianlei as a stumbling block. He had tried many ways to kick this stumbling block away. However, this stumbling block was very tenacious. No matter how far he kicked it away, it would always come back. This made him unable to guard against it. At this moment, when he saw Yi Tianlei pleading for him, not only did he not feel grateful, but his anger burned even more fiercely. He felt that Yi Tianlei was looking at him as a joke. He deliberately used his daughter to humiliate him and then pretended to plead for him to win his favor. "Yi Tianlei, I will not be fooled by you. You are no longer a member of the Ye family. Leaving you in this world will cause endless trouble. If I kill you, there will be no one to compete with me for the position of the head of the family." Yi Tianming's eyes were red and flashed with the sparks of hatred. He raised his long sword and stabbed Yi Tianlei's back. Puff! The long sword stabbed and blood immediately came out. Yi Tianlei screamed in pain and exclaimed in disbelief, "Big brother, you, Yi Tianlei, I want you dead." Yi Tianming roared hysterically. Yi Dingdang originally dispelled her killing intent, but seeing this scene, her anger surged to the top of her head with a "so" sound. Her killing intent surged as she shouted, "Shameless bastard, go die." The breeze sword pierced through Yi Tianlei's armpit and directly pierced Yi Tianlei's heart. Yi Tianming's movements froze. The long sword only pierced Yi Tianlei's muscles and did not hurt his internal organs. Yi Dingdang pulled her father and quickly retreated. She also withdrew the breeze sword. She supported her father and asked anxiously, "Dad, how are you?" When she saw that her back was stained with blood, her eyes immediately turned red and tears almost flowed out of her eyes. Yi Tianlei grimaced and took a deep breath. He said, "Dingdang, don't worry. I'm fine. This is only a superficial wound. I won't die. How is your uncle?" Yi Tianlei suddenly turned around and happened to see blood flowing out of Yi Tianming's chest. He looked at his chest in disbelief and gasped for breath. He exclaimed, "She actually injured me." He originally wanted to kill Yi Tianlei. However, he did not expect that Yi Dingdang would directly pierce his heart. He could clearly feel that his life was rapidly flowing away. He was not reconciled. It was clearly him who wanted to kill. Why was it that he was killed by this little girl? He suddenly raised his head and angrily stared at Yi Dingdang. He said, "You dare to kill me?" Although Yi Dingdang's heart could not bear it, she remembered that he had sneak attacked her father and her father had almost died under his sword. This trace of pity was thrown to the back of her mind. Being soft-hearted to the enemy was being cruel to oneself. So what if he was an elder? He did not care about their brotherhood. Why should she be merciful? Everyone had the right to kill a shameless person. You dare to kill my father, so I dare to kill you. What's wrong with that? Yi Dingdang mustered up her courage and retorted loudly. You. Yi Tianming wanted to say a few more ruthless words, but he found that he was powerless. He fell to the ground with a loud bang. His eyes were wide open. After exhaling his last breath, he was no longer alive. Yi Tianming was an important figure. Seeing him fall to the ground and die, many people's attention was attracted. Especially when all of this was done by Yi Dingdang, it was even more shocking. Yi Dingdang had only practiced martial arts for a few years, but she could actually kill Yi Tianming. This was too unbelievable. Yi Meiyu watched her father fall from afar. She did not rush over. Instead, she was so scared that her face turned pale. She sat on the ground and lost control of her bladder. She glanced at Yi Dingdang and saw her murderous aura. Her heart trembled. She was scared to death. She got up and was no longer in the mood to watch a good show. She screamed and fled. She did not care about the cold corpse lying on the ground. Yi Ku and Yi Xuanji rushed up recklessly. Looking at Yi Tianming in the pool of blood, it was as if they were immobilized. They were motionless. It was unbelievable. Suddenly, Yi Ku raised her head and stared fiercely at Yi Dingdang, saying, "You killed my father." Yi Xuanji also raised his head and was furious. "You killed my son. I'm going to kill you." The two of them shouted in unison. "Father, Yi Dingdang, this is all a misunderstanding." Dingdang made an unintentional mistake. Yi Tianlei resisted the pain of his wound and stood in front of Yi Dingdang, trying his best to explain. "I, Yi Xuanji, do not have such a rebellious granddaughter. Today, I will kill her and avenge Tianming." Chapter 824. Yi Tianlei stood in front of Yi Dingdang and anxiously explained, "Father, you can't, Dingdang is trying to save me. Disgraceful, if you dare to stop me, I will also put righteousness before family and take care of you as well." Yi Xuanji angrily said. Yi Tianlei was still like a rock, not moving an inch, and resolutely said, "I am Dingdang's father, I should be the one to bear the responsibility." "Father, why should you bear the responsibility? It was clearly that person who wanted to kill you. If I didn't do anything, then the one who would die would be you. Daring to kill my father, Yi Dingdang, will definitely not be merciful." Yi Dingdang did not budge an inch and righteously said, "You still dare to quibble. It seems like you don't put the Ye family in your eyes, you don't put your elders in your eyes, and I'm afraid you don't even put me, your grandfather, in your eyes?" Yi Dingdang raised her head and coldly snorted, "It was clearly you who were heartless. How can you blame us? Back then you chased my father out of the family, and then you pretended to take him back, and now you want to take the lives of us father and daughter for a shameless person. Humph, dream on. I have been a member of the ordinary Balance Ye family since I was young, not a member of your Beijing Ye family." Yi Dingdang's voice was powerful and impassioned, causing Yi Xuanji's veins to bulge and his temples to jump. He took a deep breath and loudly shouted, "You were born a member of the Beijing Ye family, and you will die a ghost of the Beijing Ye family. Do you really think that just because you have some ability, you can leave the Ye family? Even if you die, don't even think about getting rid of this brand. My life is my own, I am a living person, how can I let you decide?" Yi Dingdang disapprovingly retorted. "My family is unfortunate to have such a rebellious person like you. Today I will purge my family and put righteousness before family. Tianlei, if you don't move, then don't blame father for being ruthless." Yi Tianlei secretly sighed, knowing that today he will completely break off from the Beijing Ye family, and he will not be able to go back, but for his daughter, he will not turn back. He raised his head and looked at Ding Dang, and said, I am a father, so I must fulfill my responsibilities as a father. Whoever dares to hurt Ding Dang, I will not let them off. Him. Yi Tianlei's way, and he laughed. Yi, good, whatever, anyway, you have left this family for more than 20 years, I will treat you as if I never gave birth to you. Since you to die, of. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his sword and thrust it towards Yi Tianlei's chest. Yi Tianlei crossed his fists, and met the cold glinting sword. Thunder-rushing fist had no chance of winning against the sword, not to mention the difference between his cultivation and Yi Xuanji's was like heaven and earth, there was no way to cross this gap. Puff! Blood burst out from Yi Tianlei's wrist. The corner of his mouth twitched a few times in pain, but he still did not retreat an inch. He waved his fist and attacked again. Yi Xuanji's eyes were cold, filled with killing intent, and said with disdain, I can give birth to you, give you life, and I can also take your life back. Shwa shwa shwa. With a shake of the sword, a sharp sword flower covered Yi Tianlei's arm, and the sharp edge of the sword caused deep wounds to appear on his arm, with blood flowing out. If this continues, then his 2 arms will be completely crippled. Yi Ding Dang could no longer sit and watch. She jumped, and flashed past Yi Tianlei's side, and with a flick of the clear wind sword, she stabbed at him from a strange angle. Yi Xuanji knew the power of the wind-chasing sword art, and with the help of the clear wind sword, he could not ignore it. So, he had no choice but to give up on Yi Tianlei, and raise his sword to fight with Yi Ding Dang. The 2 sword arts had many similarities, they were both fast and accurate, but it was clear that Yi Ding Dang's wind-chasing sword art had the essence of it. Although her cultivation was lower than Yi Tianlei's by a few levels, she was still able to rely on her swordsmanship to not lose. This made Yi Xuanji furious, thinking that if he could learn her wind-chasing sword art, and with the clear wind sword in hand, his strength would definitely increase. At this moment, his heart actually had the thought of stealing it. It was just that Yi Ding Dang would rather die than reveal the chasing wind sword technique, which was extremely unfortunate. However, the clear wind sword was also a divine weapon, so stealing it would be extremely good. Yi Ding Dang's attack was quite methodical, and she knew when to advance and retreat. Although she was surrounded by dangers, she escaped again and again. But she was very clear that this was only temporary. After a long time, she would definitely lose, and the other party would definitely not be lenient. She would definitely die. However, what was there to fear about death? What she did was not wrong at all. Yi Tianming was not grateful, but he killed her father with enmity. Of course, she would not hesitate to make a move. She did not regret doing so. Yi Ku looked at this scene, but she could not intervene. His martial arts could not be compared with Yi Ding Dang's. After all, he did not have the clear wind sword, nor did he have the exquisite martial arts of the wind-chasing sword art. He was not willing to give up. He turned his gaze and stared at Yi Tianlei. He quietly raised his sword and attacked. Yi Tianlei has been nervously looking at his daughter. He almost did not notice this silent attack. He narrowly avoided the sword and looked at Yi Ku incredulously. Yi Ku, Yi Ding Dang killed my father, I want to take revenge for my father. Yi Ku clenched her teeth, shwa shwa shwa, she stabbed out a few more times, directly aiming for Yi Tianlei's vitals. Yi Tianlei repeatedly retreated. Yi Tianming's death made him feel guilty. How could he be willing to fight with Yi Ku again, so he retreated again and again. He just avoided and did not fight back. When Yi Ku saw this, she did not stop. Instead, her attacks became more and more fierce, making Yi Tianlei in danger. But Yi Tianlei's martial arts were much higher than his. Although he suffered, Yi Ku could not hurt him. Yi Ding Dang struggled, gritted her teeth, and sweated, but she did not compromise and beg for mercy. Her energy consumption was quite large, and her movements slowed down involuntarily, becoming more and more dangerous. At the same time, the battle between Tang Zheng and the sword god had entered a white-hot stage. He held the nameless sword in both hands to prevent it from piercing his chest. But the sharp sword chi on the sword made his hand painful. If it was not for the attractive force of the swallowing the sky technique to firmly resist the sword chi, his hand would have been ruined. The two people have been in a stalemate for a long time. The surrounding area was seriously affected and was razed to the ground. In fact, many people understood that the final result of this battle would depend on the outcome of the two people. Suddenly, there was a roar, and the sword light of the nameless sword soared. With a bang, Tang Jing flew out and broke a few trees before stopping. His hands were bloody, and the white bones inside could almost be seen. Hiss! Tang Jing kept sucking in cold air. Looking at his almost ruined palm, he almost could not recognize it. The sword chi of the nameless sword was too powerful. In the end, the swallowing the sky technique did not suck away the nameless sword. Instead, the nameless sword almost ruined his hands. The sword god suddenly arrived and stood in front of Tang Jing. He looked at him condescendingly and said, "Today, I will avenge my disciple. Go to hell." Tang Jing smiled jokingly and said, "Even now, you still don't believe my words. The Song family is the real culprit of Sword 13's death. If they did not avoid it, how could Sword 13 fight with me alone? In order to hide it from you, the Song family did not hesitate to kill all the servants present. You are the sword god, but in the end, you are blinded and confused." The sword god's eyelids twitched as he shouted, "I don't want to listen to your flowery words. Die." The nameless sword slashed down from the sky as fast as lightning. Tang Jing wanted to block it, but he was unable to do so. However, he did not accept his fate. With a thought, a white light flashed, and then a flame soared into the sky and pounced at the sword god. Whoosh! The nameless sword actually split open the flames and still fell towards Tang Jing's head. It was bound to kill him on the spot. However, Xiao Bai's flames were not to be trifled with. They instantly wrapped around the sword god and turned into a huge ball of fire. The sword god had no choice but to retreat. However, the biting cold sword she had already slashed down. Tang Jing could not dodge, and only death awaited him. Boom! With an explosion, the sword god escaped from the ball of fire. He looked at Tang Jing expectantly. However, the scene of Tang Jing dying was not what he had imagined. He was still alive. The powerful sword she had already disappeared. Instead, a woman in white appeared in front of Tang Jing. The sword god's eyes widened. His instincts told him that this woman in white was definitely not simple, but it was not because she was extremely beautiful. The sword god had never been attracted to beauties. To him, they were nothing more than pink skeletons. Although this woman in white was extremely beautiful, she could not shake his will. The only thing that made his heart tremble was that he could not see through this person's depth. She was like a bottomless spring. No matter how hard he tried, he could not see through her. Without a doubt, Tang Jing's narrow escape from death was related to this person. The sword mark asked in a low voice, "Who are you?" The Empyrean fairy did not pay attention to him. Instead, she turned to Tang Jing and said, "Take the 9 transformations soul return pill and your injuries will be healed." Not only did Tang Jing suffer from external injuries, the injuries to his internal organs were also not light. If he were to recuperate normally, he would need 10 days to half a month to recover. After hearing the Empyrean fairy's words, he quickly took out a 9 transformations soul return pill and swallowed it. Immediately, his mangled palms recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. The injuries in his body were also quickly healed. After a while, he was as lively as a dragon and as lively as a tiger. There was not a single injury on him. Tang Jing was in high spirits. This 9 transformations soul return pill was too miraculous. It could revive a dead person and regrow flesh and bones. It was not an exaggeration, but a real effect that could be achieved. The sword god did not pay attention to Tang Jing's injuries. He only stared at the Empyrean fairy's back. This person dared to turn her back to him. Didn't this mean that she did not put him in her eyes? In this world, no one had ever dared to treat him, the sword god, so this was the greatest insult to him. He was so angry that he stomped his feet and shouted, "Tell me your name. Who are you?" The sword god had challenged countless experts since the day he made his debut. That was how he became the sword god. However, when facing this woman in white, he did not dare to charge at her directly. There was a faint feeling of fear in his heart. What was going on? Other than facing the High Lords, he had never had such a thought. Could it be that this woman in white was on par with the sect leader? You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.